Hey, darlings, will you not swear? Julia kisses her husband in the cheek, depicting anxiety on her face. Well, I don't know. You have to think well. It depends on the gravity of the action, he jokes. I invited the Petrovs to our new year. Sergei turned to his wife. Well, dear, I know that you can't stand Violet, but she offered to celebrate together today, and I was confused and could not refuse. I clapped my head off so that they would come. Then I thought that maybe you won't like it. Please, don't be angry. You need to be friends with neighbors. Anything can happen in life. Having grabbed my husband around the waist, Julia, wheezing, looked into my eyes. Please. The squirrel was so happy. I felt so sorry for her. She complained to me all night yesterday that they are now not the best times for Vazia. The matter is getting divorced. Vazia, in my opinion, is out. She comes home late from work. She is not helped, almost not talked to, constantly not satisfied with everyone. And I ran away from such a woman. She talks to Vazia. She is not better. Personally, I saw myself kissing some dad in the car. She saw me, jumped out like a sprained leg, as if she was illegally detained at the crime scene. Interesting lady. Maybe you thought, well, who could have let you down? Without losing hope, she asked. Yes, we know such. She has written in large letters on her face that the woman is leading a scattered image of life. I can't understand one thing. What can you do with her? Could she not be friends with someone more decent? But I see that you will not convince her. So do you give good or not? And we will have more fun. I tried to step away from the unpleasant topic. I don't know why the husband is so biased towards Violetta, but a normal woman is not. How many times did she help us? She took her son. Let us go for fun. Of course, we did not abuse the child, but it does not matter. Well, once promised, where to go? Let them come. Displeased, he replied, and Yulka threw himself on his neck. Seryoza, I did not tell you that you are the best husband in the world. I said, scoundrel. We have a wonderful relationship with my husband. I know that he loves me. I believe him. I'm sure other women don't care about him. Actually, like me, other men. We are both civil servants. There are enough women in his environment. I'm sure many will look at him. Of course, my husband is beautiful, smart, tactful, knows how to present himself, gets a decent salary. I am also not distracted by male attention. What to say? There are little ones trying to look after me. But any patience comes to an end, because they quickly realize that it is completely useless. Julia, you are a great hostess. I try the fill-in, praised Vasily, glancing at Violetta, who almost eats nothing, but does not release a glass of champagne from her hands. Let's spend the old year, and you, Vasenka, bite and talk less. I snorted, not quite overpulled, correcting the flawless hairstyle. All right, you'll be at home swearing. Their husband politely pulls them. Let's dance. Viola turns off the sound on the TV, turns on her phone to all the slow music and invites Sergei to dance. And you, Vazia, don't be shy. Invite Yulia. She dumped her husband. Having made a sip of champagne, I grab dirty plates from the table and start pushing them into the dishwasher. I don't want to dance at all. We sat at the table with our children, but Violetta clung to Sergei like a claw. She stretches her hand, looks with an unbearable look, smiles. Dances? It was she not tries a joke. To joke. Violetta, but the neighbor, instead of answering, touchingly presses, grabbing his shoulders with her hands. My eyes were rounded, and Vasily did not even look at them. Violetta was having fun. I'm trying to hide my jealousy. I squeezed myself out. She complained to me that I didn't pay enough attention to her. I say, and I watch myself. The more my husband tries to get away, the stronger she clings to him. Don't listen to her. She says this to you. She sends me to the second shift. She always complains that I don't bring enough money. I often have to agree to a job, and then everyone complains that I don't help her at home. Yes, I thought you were running from home. Violetta suspects that you have another woman. I doubted at first, but then I decided to ask. Even if so, I assure you, Violetta will not be particularly upset. We are all going to divorce. Yulia, everything is fine? The man who broke out of the clenched Viola hands asks, touching her with a displeased look. I feel it boils, but from the last strength tries not to show the view. At about 1:00, while the children were laying down to sleep, Sergei had fun. Turning off the light in the bedroom, I hear Violetta's voice. Come on, pour, it's almost New Year, and we haven't celebrated the New Year in a long time. Sergei grabs a champagne, everyone laughs. Violetta screams that everyone must make a wish to get a set of currants. At 1:00 in the morning, Vasya got ready to go home. Violetta didn't even bring her an eyebrow. Let's have another drink. Why are you so boring? You will meet and spend the new year like this. She screams, already having forgotten that children sleep in the next room. And I already dreamed that she would calm down and go home. The holiday smoothly turns into a real drunkenness. Violetta is gladly supported by my beloved husband. Sergei, maybe that's enough? I know you. Tomorrow you will be sick. Although I understand that in this case it is useless. My husband is on his wave and will not listen to anyone. My favorite is not in one eye. I am absolutely sober.
Violetta, pour.
Puts an empty glass closer to her. Actually, my husband does not consume me much. Maybe I really hate him. After all, the new year happens once a year. They calm down at 5:00. Sergei is badly holding on to his feet. If I hadn't seen how much she had ingested, I would have thought that I wouldn't have drunk at all. He behaves well and speaks quite distinctly. Seryoza, can you help me take Anyutka home? She turns to her husband, and she smiles and looks at my reaction. No problem. He shakes his head, although he can barely stand on his feet. Violetta, don't touch Anyuta. Let the child sleep with us. Why wake her? I'm trying to be indignant. God forbid Sergei drops it. But Violetta is not going to listen to my words. She firmly stands on her own. No, Anyuta will spend the night at home. Julia, do not worry. I will help him. Sergei takes a sleepy Anyuta in his hands. Viola supports him so that he does not fall and closes the door in front of my nose. I start to psych out, but I try to calm down and write down everything on an extra glass of champagne. I wash off my makeup and, after refreshing myself a little, finally go to sleep. I close my eyes, and then I realize that my husband is still not there. I get up, put on a wavy robe and go to the neighbors. They carefully put Anyuta on their bed. The child did not even wake up, only turned on the side, turned with a rolling pin and sweetly fell asleep. Let's go. Violetta grabbed Sergei by the hand and dragged him to the kitchen. Passing by him, Violetta put her index finger on her lips. Sergei did not need to explain. They sneaked past on the chains. I closed the door tightly in the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of vodka from the chat, took 2 bottles out of the hanging wardrobe. I didn't think you were so drunk. Watching her clear actions, Sergei whispered, barely moving. His tongue. What is it? I was unlucky with my husband. He doesn't love me. I want to be loved, worshipped. So that for me the man of the city was ready to roll. Am I asking too much? She filled the glasses to the brim, put the bottle aside. Sergei was ready to reach out, but Violetta came up to him. She sat on her knees and, without taking her eyes off his face, began to lick her ass. From such an unexpected turn, Sergei's breath stopped, and when she unzipped her pants, she stopped breathing completely. I've been pining for you for a long time. Yulka is stupid. She doesn't appreciate you. I wouldn't let such a husband go anywhere with another woman. So she doesn't care. She doesn't love you. And I love it. And for a long time. Shipcha gently touched his lips and stroked his cheek with her palm. She began to unbutton her shirt. Velka, What are you doing? Vaska is sleeping behind the wall. What if he hears? You won't wake him up with a gun now. He's lazy. Even if he hears something, he will be lazy to get up. He will turn to the other side and continue to snore. He takes off his blouse without stretching it through the top. What the hell is Julia? Who will remember her now? The brains of the alcoholics went to the bakery, and perhaps they left their heads in the first place. Vialka, as if feeling his mood, starts to slowly stop doing everything for him. It became so good and pleasant. Sergei, as if remembering, begins to help her, grasping her hips with his clenched hands. At this moment, it seemed that she was so cool and awesome, not a woman, but a nuclear explosion. I remembered only when Viola jumped, ran away, and returned in a short dress, gently fastened the lightning on his pants, smiled, quickly smacked in the lips, and I start to come to myself, realizing that, having succumbed to the minutes, he did something he would never allow himself to do on a sober head. Someone quietly knocked on the door. Hearing the voice of his wife, I grab a glass from the table and throw it, trying to silence the, of course, let's go home. He gets up without paying attention to the neighbor, passes by. Tomorrow we will definitely continue our conversation. I like to talk to you. I couldn't even imagine that you are such an interesting interlocutor, says, staring at her back, hoping that, having felt her look on herself, she will come back and at least noticeably nod. But her thoughts now did not bother him at all. A little bit of a shudder, thinking about how to forget as quickly as possible, and it's better to erase everything that literally happened a few minutes ago from memory. Being next to his wife, he felt like a particular asshole and a piece of shit. He couldn't call himself otherwise, because sex with a woman that he didn't respect and even despised could only be done by such a finished moron as him. A saying came to my mind right away that there are no ugly women. There is little drinking vodka, and a miracle is happening when dressed on a headscarf. From such speeches, I became even more miserable and sad. Hugging my wife, I got a nosebleed in her hair. It would be better if we went to celebrate the holiday with my parents. I would not have drunk so much there, and would not have come to such a life. In the morning, I wake up from a persistent call to the door. Who could have gotten so early? I look at the clock. Time is minutes and minutes. I turn my head in the hope that my husband will still wake up and open the door to the uninvited guests. But he is sleeping and not even shivering. I wish I could drink so much and mix everything up. I get up, look, the child sits on the carpet, and in order not to wake up the parents, I took a gift from Santa Claus under the Christmas tree and enjoy watching him. Mama, look. He boasts a huge crane. We already have some kind of self-sufficient one. Now, I will open the door and go to eat. How long have you been up? No, just now. He nods his head. I open the door and see a happy Viola with her daughter. How insolent. A person does not sleep, and in the morning, already with the dyed hair, as if she had not gone to bed. Are you still sleeping? Without asking permission, he steps over the threshold, closes the door, and Aniutka is immediately sent to Matvey. Sergei is still sleeping, and I, as you can see, am no longer there. I answer, whining. I feel myself on her background gray mouse. And I, as if I did not sleep, I jumped neither light nor dawn, cooked Anya porridge, fed Vazia, and immediately to you. I liked it so much as we sat yesterday. Long ago, so from the soul did not have fun, rolled eyes. I want a continuation. Come on, while you are on the table cover, Sergei will wake up. Enough to sleep. The holiday continues. Fun. I feel that without Vasilia it was not enough. You shine like a Christmas tree. Oh, don't say. Tonight, you can say, for the first time, I felt happy and a desired woman. I haven't had this for a long time. Deeply, breathing in, I covered my eyes. Well, glad for you. Well done. So it will go. You look and stop talking about the divorce. I hope Sergey didn't scare either. I asked, interested. What are you there? You were so scared of him yesterday. If you didn't help him undress, he would probably have fallen right into the bed in his clothes. He still sleeps like a dead man. I don't even want to touch him. I took out a small pot, poured milk into it. Strange. It seemed to me that you have no problems with intimacy. I was wrong. I continued to push. We have no problems with Sergey at all. He just had a little overdrink yesterday, but I think we will somehow survive this indifference. We will get over it in the near future. I have no doubt. You have an earring. That one is still a cocoon, a cedar. Tearing in my hands, I took out a napkin and then suddenly remembered. Well, don't think anything bad. Well, it just seemed to me. And in the bedroom I heard Sergey's sleepy voice. Julia, bring me some water, please, and something from the head. Julia took out the first aid kit, poured it into a cup of cold mineral water, and mixed milk. You cover the table. I'll take it. Viola grabbed a blister from her hand with aspirin and rushed to help. Unconsciously, shaking her shoulders, writing down everything on Viola's cinema activity, she poured oatmeal into boiling milk. She took out a couple of salads from the refrigerator, reduced the heat on the stove, and went after Viola. I don't like this. I want everything to be different. Don't force me. Seeing Yulia, Viola suddenly became silent. Why did you suddenly become silent? Did I bother you? You have secrets from me appeared? I asked, without tearing my husband's eyes. I felt excitement in my chest. A small wave passed into the heart area, and it was clogged with double force. Yulia, do not pay attention. Sergey, who was in pain, quietly said, just Viola took a lot on herself, deciding that from yesterday I became for her a shirt guy. I explained to her that the holiday was over at this moment. Let her get ready and go home to her husband. I want to rest today and spend the day only with my family. I understood you. The offended voice was blown by the Aviola and jumped out of the bedroom. She silently grabbed her daughter's hand, despite her resistance, almost dragged her home with a wolf. A loud knock on the front door rang in the ears. Why are you so rude? What if she is offended and will never come again? I just hope for this. Let him run away. I don't like such sticky people. He takes it in his hand, pulls it to himself, and puts it on his bed. Yo, no matter what happens between us, know that I don't need anyone except you. Yo looked carefully at her husband. His eyes narrowed, and his mouth stretched out to his ears, covering his white snowy teeth. But why are you so tense? Everything is fine. We are together. This is the most important thing. He got up, and she was terrified. Julia quietly sighed, lowering her head. She grabbed her hair with her hands. Serioza, you have stripes on your back from female nails. Immediately imagined how they were having fun with Viola. After all, she was not with them for no more than minutes. You don't want to tell me anything? In her tone, it immediately became clear that nothing good is waiting for him in the near future. Not paying attention to the headache, Sergey jumped up and rushed to the mirror. He turned around near him, looking at his back from all sides, as if he did not understand where these damn scratches came from. He glanced at her, but Yulia was indignable. Barely holding back her tears, she waited for him to stop jumping and try to convince her to go back. Yulia, I don't know. I was not going to confess to my wife even under the whistle of the gun. If he confesses, he will be punished. Yulka will not tolerate the betrayal. It doesn't matter that the hot iron pond is attached to the chest and then immediately apologize. No, let Viola say anything. But he is not a fool. He will not confess for anything. We'll keep the defense until victory, who knows. Maybe Viola tried to do this during another dance. Then I call Viola. I turned it on, typed the password. Your Viola will tell you. Just don't trust her. Don't respect yourself. Did you really not notice how she was hanging on me all evening yesterday? She didn't give a damn about Vajia. Wipe the whiskey, grumble again. He began to gnaw at everything else. Yulia, let's forget about last night. You will no longer invite your half-witted neighbor to visit, and I will try not to upset you anymore. You said so much, but never answered my question. You had sex with Viola yesterday? Sergei did not have time to open his mouth as Yulia raised her hand up. Just give me a short yes or no. She looked at him without breaking away. I don't remember well. You yourself saw how I was in a state. Viola in the morning told me what it seemed to be, but she is lying. Yulia had a hard time breathing. Even if Sergei said no now, she still wouldn't believe it. Well, thank you, dear, for such an excellent New Year's gift. I opened the closet, took out the dress, clothes for my son. Matvey, son, get dressed. We're going with you to Aunt Dina. And Dad will go? He asked suspiciously. And Dad feels bad. He will stay at home. I rushed to the bathroom, washed myself with cold water, breathed. The face turned into an impenetrable mask. There was no point. I tried to put myself in his position, but obsessive thoughts entered my head and clung tightly there like nails. Mom, I don't want to go to Aunt Dina. Can I be at home with Dad? He came closer to his father. As a sign of male solidarity, he pressed close, as if he understood everything and was afraid of losing it. Yo, stop it. Why run from problems? Let's solve them together. Stay, please. Well, forgive me. It's all fucking alcohol's fault. Why did I only get drunk yesterday? I give you my word, this will not happen again. I do not want to lose you. He said something else, but Julia did not listen to him. Just in case, I collected some documents, cosmetics, and put a couple of new toys in the bag for my son. Matvey did not move out of place, stood next to his father, and was not going anywhere. Do not you want to go with me? Matvey nodded. Sergei gently stroked his son on the head. Well, great. Stay with your dad. Your food is in the full refrigerator. You will not be hungry, and I just need to vent my brains. Sergei measured with a hateful look, nodded his head, led his shoulder, reminding that for him everything is just beginning. For your actions you need to be able to answer. In the eyes of Sergei was read the feeling of sincere repentance, but it did not become easier. Yo, please stay home. If you don't want to see anyone, let's go with our son to my parents. You will calm down, and tomorrow we will talk calmly. Matvey raised his hands. The son tightly grabbed his neck, as if trying to protect himself. Tears rolled down his cheek. Julia unnoticingly wiped it out. The throat was intercepted. How to live on? She had no idea. Tears rolled back to her eyes again. She didn't want to show her weakness, but she couldn't do anything with herself. Bye. Somehow managed to silence and, until she changed her mind, left the apartment. She prayed to God not to meet anyone in the entrance. She was shocked when she saw Vasily near the elevator. Yo, what happened? Why are you crying? I wanted to talk to Vasily less now. The only desire was to run past the bullet and, without waiting, go down the elevator. She tried to say calmly, but tears flowed down her cheeks. She was ashamed of her weakness, but as she did not try to be strong at the moment, it did not work. I don't understand anything. I missed something yesterday. The squirrel came from you all wistful. She scolded me. I decided to leave the house away from sin, so that God forbid I don't break. You are running from home all in tears. Yo. They got into the elevator. Yulia turned away, not knowing how to do better. If you tell everything now, then he will run away with the disassembly to Sergei. They will definitely fight, and at home Matvey. Will you take me? Where? She asked, glaring at her nose. Although what difference where? She still did not hurry anywhere. I don't care. I'll take a walk, calm down a little, then maybe I'll go to visit a friend. True, with such a mood, I don't want to go anywhere. I got cold, lifted the collar, fastened the upper button on the jacket. I sat next to the passenger seat. I have an offer. Let's go visit my cousin. Yulia, is it convenient? I turned to him, clapped on the shoulder. Convenient. Let's go. You won't regret it. We have something to talk about. You didn't tell me why you were crying. We drove for a few minutes in complete silence. Yulia was grateful to Vasily for not being in the way of the inquiries, but her joy did not last long. As if awake, Vasily asked a question that apparently did not give him peace. I had a fight with my husband, she answered briefly. Sergei offended you? Turning his head and looking at her for a long time, waiting for an answer. For a few minutes, Yulia hesitated, but she did not notice how she spoke. I had to press my husband against the wall. It turned out that your wife and my husband managed to get away and sleep over that night. I paused, waiting for a violent reaction, but Vasily was only surprised and somehow shook his head. And why am I not surprised? He pronounced as if he was absolutely sure that everything would end. Now this holiday is automatically turning into hateful for me personally. How can it be? I kept silent only when Vasily got his phone and, even without looking who was calling, called him. I put him back in my pocket, turned to the window. I expected something like this. There is nothing to lose in the world. There is no relationship between us. We live for the sake of our daughter, like neighbors. That's how Julia raised her eyebrows in surprise. I don't know. Probably not. I can't. Disgusting. 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 I don't know. Probably not. Disgusting. I don't know anything yet. Can I forgive such a thing? As before, there will definitely be nothing. I turned my head and, as if really didn't want to know what would happen next, near the lonely multi-story building, I turned off the car, breathed lightly, as if finally I had taken off my responsible load. Well, we arrived. Let's go. Get to know my sister. Yes, how? Uncomfortable, it's a holiday, and we are empty-handed, and the stores don't work. Vasily looked at the closed. I was talking on the phone with Vazia. It turns out they celebrate the holiday with your wife Yudinka. They are having fun there, and we are worse. I made soup for the children, and she and you covered the table. Take Matvey and come. Anya has already got bored. Let them play with Matvey. Sergei coughed, and her impudence on his face appeared confusion. Barely holding himself back so as not to grab her skin and not push out, he poked through. What do you want? I explained it to you so that your legs would never be here again. Sent my son to the room. And yesterday he said that I was a bitch or afraid that my wife would find out. She smiled crookedly. She is now not before you. My husband is next to her. And Vazia will try to get into her trust. He always put your Yulia in my example. He is of course silent with me, but I think she likes him. I crossed my arms on my chest and rolled over the door with my back. A crooked smile continued to play on my lips as if I was not going to react to his offensive words. I told my wife everything today. I hope I can ask her for forgiveness. I roughly pushed her aside, opened the door, left and warned her not to ever see her in our house. I will see her. I will not see that she is a woman. I will lower the stairs. I grabbed her by the elbow and began to escort her. And so I did not find a place for myself. I was worried that I was acting like a pig. I felt like a pig. And now Sasha Rashin was so much like her that it seemed that if she touched Yulka with offensive words, she would definitely go down the stairs. I didn't think she was so stubborn. Well, we overslept after drinking. Sit and be silent. Pretend that there was nothing. So no, she cleared it up. If she decided that she caught him, then let her sleep calmly. It all happened so quickly that I didn't understand anything. And if I get pregnant? I was stunned as if she was already pregnant and was already in a safe pocket. You won't be a fool and you'll get an abortion. Because making children drink is, in my opinion, a crime. Why did you think that a child can be born unhealthy? She talked so sweetly as if she was playing. Because we were both in an unchangeable state. Only such a stupid woman like you will go at such a risk. But this number will not pass with me. Sergei tried to close the door, but Viola coquettishly put her built leg. What a stupidity. I have a nut house in the same condition, and nothing, a completely healthy child. Perhaps surprised by the shoulders. Once in a while you don't have to, and my friends were born with deviations. Do you need it? And don't think about coming to me with such a question. I will have a short conversation. He himself pulled the skin into the hospital. Viola, not holding back, snorted. I'm staying tonight to spend the night at Dina's. Tomorrow Matvey will pick up Mom. I have an appointment with her. And where will Vasily spend the night? He said, but the question remained unanswered. Don't worry, son. We will definitely repair your car, but later. Now Dad is not in time. Get ready. We are going to visit Aunt Dina. We will go to Mom. Matvey ran around, effectively laughed, trying to make his father laugh, but he failed. Matvey, stop fooling around. Get dressed faster. Strictly pulled. Today Sergei was not in a mood for fun. She was not happy about anything, but the people who came to congratulate her on the phone took her out of the house. Fortunately, it was not necessary to make a happy face and wrinkle from yourself, not to understand who you put on. Seeing that her father was not in the mood, Matvey independently stuffed a t-shirt in his pants, put on a thick cap, wrapped around the neck scarf, took the boots off the shelf. Dad, are you coming soon? I'm ready. Sergei looked at his son. Matvey stood near the threshold, walking over his feet. What a big, serious, considerate one. It will be a pity if the wife does not forgive and will divorce. The heart was torn apart by one thought. God forbid, become a father for your child. And about the fact that someone else will appear next to Yulka over time, I didn't want to think at all. That's it, son. Let's go. Dina got the second bottle of wine from the bar. Vasily practically did not drink. He ruined several times just to not offend the girls and dilute their female company. And what are you going to do? Dina, not stopping, sighed, squeezing her teeth and wounding her head. And when tears appeared in Julia's eyes, she stroked her head like a little girl. I don't know. At the moment I don't like to see him. If it weren't for the child, I wouldn't call at all. She choked her nose again because of the insult. I don't think I can. I had to leave the house. The branch is back with him. It's no gate anymore. And after that he will tell me that he wants to save the family. Tears no longer held back. They rolled on their cheeks and dripped down. Think well, but I can assure you that people do not change. Look at me. A good example. Dina pointed her index finger at herself in the chest. Looking at Vasily, I shyly smiled, grabbed. Vasily liked her. And the way he behaved culturally at the table led to the idea that this would not end their acquaintance. She will try. Although Dina could not help but notice that Vasily looks extremely interested in Yulia. Once the husband forgave, he swore that the demon confused, loves only me, no one needs him. He sat on his ears. I naturally believed and forgave. And what do you think? Did he stop at this? The second time I forgave her again. What's the point? We broke up anyway. I don't regret a gram. It's better to live with a person you don't trust. Dina looked at her upset sister again. I went through all this myself. I don't wish this on the enemy. When I divorced with my husband, I lost 6 kilograms on the nerve area. I raised my index finger up, stroked Yulia on the shoulder. Dina, where is your husband now? Vasily asked. Who knows him? I'm not interested in his life. If he got married again, then it remains only to sympathize with his wife. I don't need such happiness anymore. Someone rang the doorbell. Dina reluctantly got up and went to open the door. They sat so well together. I didn't want to break the ideal with an empty chatter. Mom. The first to fly into the kitchen was the joyful Matvey. Yelina's heart began to beat twice as fast. Happy New Year. The voice of a familiar voice was heard. Slowly turned around, the evil glared, as if giving opportunity to Sergei. It's not too late to think and leave. Turned away again, trying to pretend that too busy, concentrate and not be distracted by guests who no one expected. At the edge of the eye, she noticed that her husband was leaning on his shoulder, turning the, Vasya, you and I need to talk. Let's go out and have a smoke in the entrance. He said it in a tone as if he was apologizing in advance. Vasya, don't go. You didn't have enough to fight. The holiday is already ruined. For complete happiness, all that remains is to break each other's noses. Having taken a couple of steps to get between them, I heard Vasily's words near my ear. Yo, don't worry, we'll just talk. I promise you that no one will fight. Vasya, I'm sorry. Yesterday I behaved like a complete loser. I don't know what I found. If you feel better, you can stab me in the face. I deserve it. They went down to the platform between the floors. The window counter, which had been covered, was empty for Sergei. It was embarrassing and unbearably hard to look into the eyes of the neighbor. I wanted to scream and squint my teeth from my own helplessness. Crush everything around. Don't worry, everything is fine. We have been living like neighbors for a long time. Each has his own personal life. I don't worry about her. I'm more upset about Yulia. I would cut you with pleasure for her tears. Having made a small break, I fixed the clock on my hand. Why did you come? Yulia needs to calm down. Let her come to herself. She just stopped crying, and then you drew. Shaking his head, Sergei made himself gather, concentrate. I opened my mouth to say in all hearing that I will not allow the conversation to continue in such a way. I bowed, so that no one could hear his whisper with his wife. I'll figure it out myself. We don't need any foreign advisors here. Let's get together and go home now. How did you get here? I'm absolutely not interested. But I warn you that next to Yulka I have not seen you again. I hope we understood each other. And I ask you to tie your wife. Maybe I'll say offensive words now, but I'm not interested in women like Viola. I got you. Vasily looked at Sergei with a reproach. He didn't want to go home at all. He liked being in the company of girls, listening to their conversations. He did not strive to stand out in their background or make an impression. He just listened and was even a little jealous. It was clear that Yulia was very worried. Crying despite the mind incomprehensible act loves Sergei and even tries to write everything on his alcoholic drinking. I wanted such a real love, and not these ridiculous relationships in which many years ago pulled his Viola and from which only painful and unpleasant memories remained. I turned a thoughtful look on the window for a few seconds, looked at one point. You were waiting for a call from your wife? Sergei smiled. It's not your business. He threw Vasily over his shoulder, climbing up the stairs, and at the same time making up a serious excuse for the girls. Thank you for the hospitality. It was nice to meet you. The eyes looked at the surprised girls with sincere gratitude. They stayed a little longer alone, which, as if the fish opened and closed the mouth. Maybe you'll stay? Where are you in a hurry? He said himself that no one is waiting at home. She muttered with unwavering anger, looking at Sergei, and without a gram of doubt that without his participation, it would not have been possible here. She was even more upset when Vasily got the phone, asked for the address, and called a taxi. Matvey, let's go outside, spend Uncle Vasya, and at the same time get some fresh air. Dina was unhappy about the ruckus. Odina, looking at her son-in-law, deliberately, hard to breathe, rose from her seat and, threatening Sergei with a finger, left them alone. You two go home. We will definitely talk to you, but later. I can't and don't want to see you. I need to think. Spread everything on the shelves. Look at our situation with a sober look. I lowered my gaze, trying to give my face as much as possible more independent and calm look. Now I don't want to hear anything. I beg you very much, don't touch me for at least 2 days. Give me time to think, otherwise I won't be able to stand it, and everyone will be worse than that. Yulia, please, this is not the case to destroy the family. I don't give up this Viola. Seeing her tears, nervously I held my hand over my hair, carefully picking up the words. This stupid chicken, having learned that you left with Vaska, came again. But I specifically outlined the situation and explained that if she even once comes to our doorbell, she will fly to the club from the stairs. You can have no doubt, I will do it. The overwhelming silence reigned in the kitchen. I love you, quietly said. I give you the word that I will never allow myself to drink to such a state again. We are leaving with Matvey now, but I rely on you and your prudence. Please come home. My son and I will be waiting for you. Happy moments of their happy family life flashed before their eyes. My heart involuntarily sank at the thought that such moments would remain in the distant past and would never happen again. A picture appeared before her eyes when Sergei proposed to her. Wedding, birth of a son, Matvey's first steps. As on March, Sergei and his son stood with flowers near the bed and patiently waited for her to wake up. The festive breakfast was on the table, and the box with the gift was lying next to the pillow. I heard you. And now go away. Julia turned away. At the moment, it could be compared with a broken toy, which, if you try, can be assembled. Well, if nothing works out, sort it out and send it to the spare parts. Well, what? Still did not submit to the contract of the husband, did not go home. Wiping her hands, reddened from frost cheeks, she said to Dina, well done. You did the right thing that did not go. Let him worry. It's good for him. What a bastard. He also sent Vazia. I will never forgive him for this. As they say, neither to yourself, nor to people. Dina, unfortunately, sighed. You think for yourself. He promises you everything you want now. My gold mountains are also. 3 days later, she returned home. Sergei and her relationship was tight. They slept separately, talked only as needed. It's been a month, and Rana still bled and did not recover. She did not hurry to divorce, but she could not forgive either. Memory was not released, and as soon as Julia was going to forgive her husband, let go of the offense and never remember about it, then she would definitely meet a neighbor on the site with and drive you crazy with your arrogant, sweet smile. Thank you, Svetlana Igorevna. It was very tasty. Sergei followed Yulia from the table. The mother-in-law stayed with them for the second day, and we must give credit that with her arrival the relationship between them warmed up slightly. So that my mother would not have any suspicions, she had to sleep in the same bed. Everyone slept under their own blanket, but Sergei was happy about that too. So he has a chance left, and he will definitely take advantage of it. There was no news from Viola. The neighbor turned out to be a very smart lady, immediately understood everything, took to the information that no one was going to joke and play with her. Together with Julia, they began to view the ads for the sale of apartments more often. Sergei even chose the time and went to the bank for consultation. Children, and I'm waiting for everything when you share the news with me. Svetlana Igorevna mysteriously smiled, stroked her grandson on the head. I poured him tea, put a pancake on the plate, added a spoonful of sour cream. What? Julia slowed down at the door. I looked at my happy mother, turned my gaze to my husband. Well, aren't you ashamed? Why should I learn such news from my neighbors, not from my children? I bade my son-in-law. I did not understand what neighbors could tell you. My heart, as if feeling a trick, turned over treacherously and was filled with speed of beats per minute. It seemed a little more, and Julia, as if a jet plane, will tear off the ground and fly around all the hard-to-reach areas. Well, how about it? Today, on the playground, I met Violetta. She is still so pleasant. She sighed. wiped the tear that rolled out of the corner. She hinted that I would soon become a grandmother. I even kissed her for such joyful news. Finally, I thought that I wouldn't wait for a second grandson or granddaughter from you. Yul, don't you want to tell me anything? Svetlana Igorevna's face was shining like a polished samovar. She looked expectantly at her daughter, completely not noticing that she was nervous and could barely restrain herself so as not to burst into tears again to reassure you. I'm not pregnant, and having children in the near future is not part of my plans, she said dryly. A happy smile flew off Svetlana Igorevna's face. Apparently, she did not like the answer and was surprised. She suddenly shrunk, and it seemed that she had become even less in height. How so? Violetta said that Sergei would soon become a father again. She spoke in a ridiculous way and looked at the pail as if he had a son-in-law. On his frowning face, she immediately realized that she was blabbing something she shouldn't have. But she always climbs where she is not asked. Svetlana was angry at herself, at Viola, at the neighbor who stopped and was present when talking. Sergei, why does Viola say that? Did something in her head seem to have changed? Immediately she bowed to her grandson. She opened her eyes and closed her mouth with her hand. For a few seconds, they looked at each other closely, and only after that she rushed to her daughter, finally realizing what had actually happened. I'm going to go and choke this creature with my bare hands. Sergei rushed to the door, grabbed the handle. Stop, Julia shouted. Sergei, not turning around, stopped. Looking into the eyes of his wife and mother-in-law was embarrassing. Where are you going? Now you're breaking the firewood again. Well, what are you going to do? You should have thought about it before. The voice of the wife was unusually ringing. It looks like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Most of all, the mother-in-law was irritated that I could not calm down. Well, it turns out, Sergei is cheating you? How do you endure all this? My poor girl, Svetlana whispered, spitting out her son-in-law's hateful look. Viola is lying. She saw that we were together and decided to fight us. Yulia, I beg you, do not believe her words. Be smarter. We will soon change the apartment. We will leave. We will never remember her again. Try to calm everyone down. Svetlana grabbed her head. It seemed that the balance was broken. Many became witty and did not listen at all. On the machine, I grabbed my grandson and locked myself in the room with him. I had to calm down, take myself in my hands, and stop my grandson from all this dirt. Here you are, Seryozenka, an approximate family man. But the child was walking on the side. Is it possible? Why is Yulia tolerating all this? The questions poured out like from the mouth and from the abyss. I wanted to get answers to them immediately, but she understood perfectly that the children are not there yet. She heard the knock at the front door. Svetlana was worried and left the room. Where is Sergei? Yulia was sitting on a sofa near the door, big eyes on a pale face, as if frozen, and looked at one point. Went to deal with the Viola. Svetlana got dizzy, shook her head. It made no sense to take the daughter on interrogations. Let them figure it out themselves. She went down next to her on a pillow, hugged, kissed her in the head. Everything will be fine. At the exhale she spoke, although she perfectly realized that there would be nothing good anymore. Viola opened the door. Sergei hurriedly broke into the apartment, barely held back so as not to throw fists at her. With the effort of incredible efforts, he tried to preserve the indisputable expression of the face, but it was not possible to hold himself in his arms. You are what she said, my mother-in-law, who asked you to dissolve your bad tongue. I expected to see Vasily or Anyutka, but they were not at home. I warned you that I would go down the stairs. Go and be careful, because I will do it. You cannot even doubt. And what did you want? If you do not believe, here is the evidence. I opened the bag, got 2 tests. Look, I'm not kidding. If you do not believe, we can go to the doctor together tomorrow. And don't blame me for everything. I was also under the influence of alcohol. Both are guilty. Do you like it or not? But we will answer together. Viola opened the test. Sergei saw 2 clear stripes. Open the second one. There is the same. What do you hope for? I love my wife and will never leave her. Do what you want, but I will never recognize this child. It must also be proved that he is mine. He was literally turned away from understanding what shit he was involved in. Will he really leave the child? I need to be a complete idiot to take such a desperate step. Most of all, she was worried about how the wife would react to this news. She will definitely not forgive the child. This is not all the news. Viola opened her hand again. I was in the clinic today and did an ultrasound. You hold on tight on your feet. Stretched a folded sheet. Sergei did not react. All that she was saying to him now was absolutely purple. We will have a double. She said in such a tone as if she suspected that he would scream, resist, accuse in all non-existent sins. Sergei nervously swallowed. He grabbed the door handle, looked at the Viola with disbelief. To his surprise, he noticed the expression of confusion on her face. And so far he could not comprehend anything except the feeling of irresponsibility and guilt to himself. Serioza, calm down. I have heard from you many times that you love your wife. I once loved my husband too. Well, as you can see, I fell in love. Do not worry, it's just the first time it's hard, then you'll get used to it. Once you have to answer for your actions. And Yulka, when she finds out that we will have a double, will never forgive you. Enough of the chipu. Who will you need with 3 children? Think about it yourself. I don't even want to hear anything about them. If you don't get rid of it yourself, then I'll help you with it. You can have no doubt. Sergei slammed the door. He didn't understand how he felt in his apartment. The throat was overlaid. A full sleep was overflowing in the head. Yulka, with red tears in her eyes, sat next to the door. The mother-in-law was ready to throw herself at the protection of her daughter at any moment. Well, she asked Nusav with a hoarse voice. How he wanted to calm her down now, pick up such words so that she would finally smile. After all, nothing in the world can lift the mood, to cheer up, to inspire as it does his favorite Yulka. But unfortunately, he could not please his wife. Everything is bad. Viola is waiting for a double. Says for me. One hope for a DNA test, but it's too early to do it now. Jumped and ran away. Did the business, and now you don't know what to do. And it won't work, dear, to climb a tree and not to tear your ass. It's necessary how I tried to double the neighbor for a bath. And you are sour? Julia turned to the snarling nose. I look at you. You have no pride at all. The husband shudders on the side of the children, and she cries. She herself is looking for an excuse. Not bad, he's got you. I have no more words. Coming to her senses, Julia took a few breaths and exhalations, after which she bowed to her mother. You came to your grandson, so go to him. I didn't want to say anything to you at all, because I understood how you would react. Sergei went down on his knees, took her hands, and put them on his cheeks. Yulia trembled, bowed to her mother. Svetlana negatively shook her head and, without saying a word, demonstratively went to her grandson's room. Who does she have such an empty head for? There is no more family. Why cling to a man who betrayed? And the squirrel turned out to be such a bastard. In the eyes he whispers, and behind the back he does the filth. Lysimurka. She sat down on the chair. Grandson Drew tried to explain something, but Svetlana heard nothing. Her thoughts were far away. Only the stretched smile, bowed, shook her head. She looked at the album sheets and thought about how to protect her daughter from the... Julia, please don't go away. Believe me, I'm also bad. From one thought that you will not be near me, I want to choke Viola so that she never more not blushing before my eyes. Put your head on her knees. Lord, if he had the opportunity to turn time to sleep, he would have lived this day differently. I would not have drunk and did not cheat on my wife. Serious, how do you imagine this? What kind of life will we have? You saw it perfectly. I tried to forgive you. I hoped that we would move, everything would be formed over time. But now everything has changed. If Viola gives birth to 2 children to you, then I will not be able to step over myself. Barely raising my legs, I headed to the room to my son. Mom, can we temporarily live with Matvi at your place? Not paying attention to the dissatisfied look, the son sat down on the chair. Yul, please don't leave. Nothing is known yet, and you are already ready to pack your suitcase and go to your mother. From the burning gaze of the mother-in-law, the cheeks burned. Sergei was ready to fall through the ground only to avoid her moral teachings. The relationship between them was good. Always patiently listened to her advice, though not always fulfilled them, but for the sake of his wife was ready to agree with many. And you want Julia to close her eyes on everything? Svetlana looked at him. My daughter did not find herself in the dumpster, but she was well equipped. From the disappointment, she clapped her leg. Tears flashed in her eyes. Svetlana Igorevna, you don't know anything. I'm sorry, but it was once. I got drunk and didn't understand anything. Viola then began to blackmail me. She didn't succeed. Then she came up with a new trick. Probably she's wiping her hands now, sitting by the door and waiting for Julia to unload the suitcase. Everything was clearly played out, as if by notes. And you, Svetlana Igorevna, played her. I do not deny my guilt. I know that I have acted like the last animal, ready to bear any punishment. Moreover, nothing is known yet. Maybe it's worth getting to know everything first? Svetlana was not happy with the joke, but she thought about it. Again, she looked at her daughter. Now she thought she was confused and did not understand anything. I could only exhale one long whistling sound. Wow, how he spoke. First, he brought my daughter to a nervous breakdown, and now he spoke as if everyone around him was to blame except him. Maybe we should still feel sorry for you. Poor thing? Julia sat on a chair and indifferently followed the conversation. Yul, let's go to the bank together tomorrow and get a mortgage for the apartment we like. Let's move, and let our neighbor die of envy. I understood that my mother-in-law was right, but I did not lose hope to drag Julia to my side. She bit her lips. The proposal was tempting. What is there to hide? She sat down and thought about it. In order not to regret anything later, you need to calm down, hide emotions, and come to the solution of the problem with a cold head. She stubbornly asserted about herself, as if she were teaching a small poem to Jesus. Okay, I'll stay. But if Viola throws something else, I don't know. My nervous system is not iron. I'm afraid I'll break again. And this will be the final decision. He won't throw it away. He won't have time. We will move with you soon. Sergei clung to her, carefully pressed to himself. Nervous tremble passed over the body. With a deep breath, he buried himself in her hair. Svetlana even thought that Sergei was on the edge and barely held back to not tear himself apart. He grabbed his wife like a life-saving straw. He held on and was afraid to let go so as not to lose again. There were strange sounds in the entrance. Having put on the robe, Viola came up to the door, looked into the eye. From the apartment opposite, the loaders carried out some boxes, talked loudly, shouted, and chatted without a word. They don't think about the neighbors at all, they don't sleep themselves, and they don't let people rest on the weekend. When stroking her hair in front of the mirror, she could not hold back and opened the door. What a noise. Can't you be quieter? On the weekend, people are resting, and you are in the way. Viola went out into the entrance and looked at the door open. Maybe Yulka is finally leaving? It's been a long time. Sergei walked around the apartment, pointing at what to wear first. Are you leaving? The girl smiled, saying, I'm sorry. She tried to grab the railing, but she failed. A loud scream was heard. Without holding on, Viola slipped off the stairs. At the last moment, she tried to grab the railing, but she turned it around, hit the wall with force, and she rolled down with a broom. One of the loaders swelled up. The girl was killed. Throw the couch. All four ran to Viola. She lay on the platform between the floors, as if broken. The doll was silent and silent. The young man leaned over it, stretched out his hands to lift it from the concrete floor. Don't touch. Don't touch. We need to call an ambulance urgently. Who knows what? Hearing the screams, Sergei went out to the site. One of the loaders called an ambulance. The other tried to put a jacket under her head. From a grumbling story, he realized that Viola was injured because of his curiosity, and literally in a minute he saw Vasily, who came out to the noise. The smell of medicine was, in horror that nothing can say, carefully looked at the girl, trying to remember at least something. You are in the hospital. I will call the doctor now. The nurse came out, and just a couple of minutes later, the doctor entered the room, looking at the pictures. After depicting a happy smile on his face, he sat on the edge of the bed. How do you feel? Viola was silent. He himself must understand how a person who has a whole body is breaking can feel. As if he was crushed with a concrete slab, and not ask stupid questions. You have a broken arm, a right leg injury, a broken rib. He smiled at me as if he were apologizing for the forced miscarriage. Unfortunately, I was unable to maintain pregnancy. I am very sorry, but we did everything we could. Viola closed her eyes. I didn't want to hear and see anyone else. The doctor tried to calm her down, brought some numbers, but she didn't answer. She opened her eyes, looked at the ceiling and dreamed only of one thing, that he would finally leave and leave her alone. Dina, hello, this is Vasily. I was your guest on January Street. Of course I remember Vasily. I wanted to say that I was tired of waiting for his long-awaited call, but she silently remained silent. She just smiled. Imagine how Vasily was embarrassed and could not. Dina, please tell Yulia not to be upset anymore. Viola could not keep her pregnancy. Let Sergei sleep calmly too. She now has nothing to blackmail him with. And thank you, Vasily, for such news. This is, of course, cruel, but I think Yulia will be happy. Dina kept silent. On the one hand, she was happy for her sister. She perfectly understood that Yulia was worried, and they often had conflicts with Sergei on this ground. She herself was recently a witness to a small scandal that broke out in a peaceful place. Yulia seemed to forgive, but Viola's pregnancy did not give her peace. But on the other hand, she was a little upset. Still, she hoped that Vasilia liked her a little. To push him to decisive action, she dictated the phone herself, watched him dial her number in her contacts. And I really thought that you decided to invite me on a date. Dina blinked her eyes, but it didn't make it easier. Imagining Vasily's confused face, she immediately felt how her own face immediately filled with paint of embarrassment. Dina, I really want to invite you on a date. Tomorrow I will be waiting for you near your house. He made big pauses as if every word was a high and arduous rock with which he constantly fell. With incredible effort. Well, she asked for a date. Vasily, if you... Dina did not agree. Gina, do not be late, please, because I have 2 tickets in my pocket for the concert of your favorite band. Beginning at... Dina managed to keep her pace and not jump, and answering as if for her it meant nothing at all. Then before the meeting, she calmly spoke and hung up the first one. Sergei was screwing screws on a new kitchen tool. He was assembling it the second day. Today he planned to finish and start drilling holes in the wall for the garden. Sergei, Dina finally called Vasya, invited her to the concert. Yulia bit her lip as if she wanted to say something else, but she didn't dare. Sergei sat down on the chair, held her hair. At work, they took 3 days at their own expense. They brought the apartment into a divine appearance. It was possible to do at least a small cosmetic repair, but now it was not before that. The main thing was to move soon, and it is desirable never to meet with the neighbor on the stairs again. When I remembered her, Sergei's eyes began to twitch and he lost his mood. Vasya asked to tell that Viola is crying because the doctors were unable to save her pregnancy. On his lips a smile appeared. Raising his head, closed his eyes and breathed easily. Thank God. I can't believe it. Will this woman really leave us? Sergei waved his head, smiled openly, seemed a little more and danced. After getting up from the table, he pulled himself up to Yulia, but she stopped his rush. What kind of Vasya is still a good boy? Yulia, darling, maybe you'll finally forgive me. Well, how much can you? He tried to get closer again, but Julia again did not allow him. Let him suffer more, so that next time, before doing something, he first thought. Although, from such wonderful news, his head was spinning, palms sweated, and every centimeter on the skin felt weak impulses of current. Excited that she still listened to her heart, believed and was not afraid, and decided to try to go this path together with her husband. Sister, hello, how's life? Even by voice Julia felt that Dina is in a high mood. Her optimism and life-loving could only be envied. Julia washed her teeth, all this time holding the phone in one hand and not stopping listening to her excited shouts. Moved to the kitchen, sometimes trying to insert a small replica and not stopping sincerely rejoice for Dina. Vasya made me an offer, registration next Friday, but everything will be modest, we will sign. And in the evening we will sit in the restaurant. Well, thank God. I'm so happy for you. Well done, Dinka. You did your best. The conversation was floating in memory time after time. It seems that Dina complained recently that Vasya, meeting her, is not going to divorce. He is fine with everything, and he did not want to hear anything about the wedding. And then such a sharp turn, too. Most of all, she didn't want to leave his apartment. Vasya was also worried about this, but under the strict guidance of Din, Viola still went to see her parents, leaving them a 2-room apartment in which they are now doing repair. This is not all the news. Yulia was out of breath. We are waiting for the child with Vasya. 8 weeks. I didn't tell anyone. I'm afraid to look. She whispered in one breath, and as if she was really afraid to share the most sacred. What is the news? So the news. Vasya, probably, in the 7th heaven, from happiness. The answer could have been guessed in advance, and stupid questions do not ask. Because I was absolutely sure that Vasya shines from happiness like a clean petal. Well, I reacted normally. Immediately made an offer, otherwise I would still go to the brides. Dina giggled. The voice of Vasily was heard in the phone. Dina quickly said goodbye, reminded her again about the next Friday, and called off the challenge. There were few people in the restaurant. Close relatives, 2 single girlfriends from the side of the bride, several colleagues at work, and 1 single friend from the side of the groom. The evening was in full swing. From the conversations, music, and laughter, there was a deafening noise in the hall. The air conditioners worked at full power, but it was stuffy in the hall. The waiters knocked on the door, removing the dirty dishes from the tables, carrying out a drink, a mineral, a graphite with juice. One of Dina's colleagues turned out to be old friend of Sergei, so old that they did not immediately recognize each other. Sergei sat next to Yulia, practically did not drink. They poured more on the mineral and juices with Matvey, and rarely went out to breathe fresh air and smoke. Meeting on the street with an old friend immediately transformed and had fun. Sergei, a little more, and we will go home. Matvey is already tired. I went to my friend's house, choked and drank a sip. After a good wash, Sergei rubbed his son's head, took cigarettes, waved at Olga, and they went out together. What's your thing? I'm having fun. Watching my son-in-law, Svetlana Igorevna was. Well, now you will order to stand next to him with a gun. But there is nothing wrong with that. Let them talk. She would now give a lot so that Sergei would not get drunk again, take himself in his hands and go home. Trying not to show off, But looking at the behavior of her husband, some kind of bad premonition and a feeling that something should happen. Tomorrow he will read the moral again and say that Sergei promised, but he could not refuse his harmful habits. Let's sit down a little longer. I want to talk to Olga. We haven't seen her for years. Can you imagine? I didn't even recognize her, if she didn't come to me herself. I waved the organ with my hand so that she could get closer to them. I asked the waiter to bring her clean appliances. Sergei, I warn you, if in minutes you don't go home, Matvey and I will leave without you. It's late, son. It's time to rest. All understood, met old acquaintances, talked, shared memories. But next to you is your family. Is it really not clear that they can't be forgotten either? Matvey came up to his father, began to persuade his father to go home. Yulia took out her phone bag and ordered a taxi. Sergei, having drunk with Olga on a puss, said goodbye and headed to the door. In the car, Julia did not say anything, but as soon as they crossed the threshold with a frowning eye, she was already going to say everything she thinks about him. But she realized that while they were driving, her husband was even more unlucky, and today it made no sense to call out to his conscience. What is wrong again? Having caught her bewildered look, Sergei loudly yanked, shook his pockets, but there he found nothing except a lighter. He took off his jacket and hurriedly threw it on the floor. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and today go undress and go to sleep. She caught herself thinking that it was possible to obey to the day, not to believe her husband, and not to give him that the only chance. Sergei was enough for exactly 1.5 years. During this time, all the bad things flew away from memory, and now he, forgetting the promise with new powers, is ready to demonstrate all his abilities. In this minute, Yulia called the phone. A photo of a happy bride shone on the screen. Hello. She spoke politely, putting the phone on loud connection. Yulia, Sergei forgot his borscht in the restaurant. What should I do with her? Din, give her to her mother. She was going to come to us tomorrow. How could she do such a terrible thing and not even remember about the borscht? I told him not to take it and all my reasons and put it in her bag. Aunt Sveta left after you. I called you not to worry. If you don't mind, I'll take her to myself. Let Sergei not worry. We will return in integrity and safety. I forgot the borscht. Sergei immediately, slightly shaken, clung to the conversation. He was as worried as if he had slits of gold. Dina, I'll call a taxi now, and in half an hour I'll be in the restaurant. Ordered a taxi. I have a phone, wallet, passport, money, a pay card. I'm fast. One leg here, the other there. How can I do without a phone? Think for yourself. The car was supposed to arrive in minutes. Feeling a bad look on myself, I hugged her and, smiling, stretched. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. In the same car back, Julia tried to block the road, 'cause a feeling of guilt. She put her hand on her cheek, offering to think well and not go anywhere now. Not to bring the situation to tears, smear cosmetics, and not to burst into open conflict. She tried to explain that he would regret it tomorrow, but it would be too late. But Sergei, kissing her cheek, smiled crookedly, once again making sure that nothing bad would happen. He pushed his wife aside, literally jumped out of the apartment and tightly closed the door. Sergei, what are your fates? If memory does not deceive me, you left home. Olga was standing on the street with a friend. Guests slowly moved around the houses. A few minutes later, happy young wives appeared on the street. Seryoza, here is your borscht. Seeing that he is talking to Olga again, Dina was not angry at the joke. She grabbed him by the hand, dragged him aside and, so that no one hears, whispered, You had little trouble with Viola? I was talking to Julia now. She is worried about you. Stupid. She is not sleeping. Her eyes are in a wet place. I would kill you. In case of him, the Barseka tried to put Vazia in the next taxi. Dina, you now have a husband. So worry about him, and Julia and I will figure it out ourselves. I will take Olga home and go home right away. I promise." It was useless to argue with him now. Not thinking for a second, grabbed Olga by the hand, put her in the back seat with him, ordered the taxi driver to drive at the specified address. What a fool. Tomorrow he will regret it, only it will be too late. She warned her sister that people do not change, so she did not want to hear anything. Here you are, please. One extra glass and a man will not recognize, as if the devil has settled in. I'm not going anywhere, except home. With a sigh, the regret was felt. It was on the day of our registration. I'm not lucky. I'm not lucky. For some it's a holiday, and for some it's a grief. Poor Yulia. Don't be so drunk, not so Sergei, so that you can sleep again with someone else. Gently stroking his wife on the stomach, he tried to stand up to protect his relative Vasily. They did not notice the conversation when the taxi driver stopped the car near the Olga's house. Maybe you can come in for a cup of coffee? Or are you afraid that your wife will scold you? Olga said with a grin. Seeing that he was putting the card on the terminal, she waited until he paid and only then opened the door. The main thing is that your boyfriend doesn't get jealous of you, Sergei smiled. Now he was struggling with two strong feelings. The first is self-loathing for the fact that again I could not restrain my impulse and go home. And the second, it's a great pleasure to talk to a girl who once lived in their yard and whom he practically never noticed. Yulka was not going to change. The world-foolish story with Viola has not yet been forgotten in memory, but he still could not refuse to spend time in good company. And his wife? Yulka, of course, will be outraged, but she will definitely understand him. She herself recently went to a meeting with classmates without him, and nothing. There was no light in the entrance. The sewage was stinking. Some flies were flying. Olga could not get to the locked well with a key for a long time. Sergei could not stand it, took out his phone, turned on the flashlight. I wanted to turn around and leave, but I heard, "What would I do without you?" After that, I decided to come in for just a few minutes.
Come in.
I feel like home. You cannot worry. After the divorce with my husband, I live alone. I undressed, slid my pants, threw my shoes in different directions. I went to the kitchen, changed into a wavy dress, went to the kitchen again. I got a dissolved coffee, sugar, put 2 cups on the table, turned on the kettle. You know, I'll probably go. Seeing Yulia's missed call, I blurted out, "I'm sorry." And then my wife, God forbid, thinks of some other nonsense. Smiling, I began to rise. Cups inside were black. Sergei could not understand how they can be drunk. And how about coffee? Did I boil the kettle in vain? You order a taxi first. We have such an unfavorable district. While the car arrives, you will have time not only to drink coffee, but also to sleep. Sergei looked at Olga with distrust. Honestly, I tell you, you yourself saw what kind of road there are. Some are deaf and some are deaf. So call your wife so that she does not lose you in any case. The car will arrive not earlier than an hour later, or maybe 2. Pouring boiling water. It sounded like, of course. Not much confused, because it was pure truth. The car really arrived for Sergei only after an hour and a half. After finding out the address, the taxi drivers refused to go to this district. The operator called several times, asked to wait first, then minutes, then again postponed departure. Sergei was ready to walk on the highway, but Olga was talking him out. She assuredly explained that the local thug was not sleeping and would gladly rob him, undress, and take him to the thread. When finally a long-awaited SMS came to the phone that a taxi had arrived, Sergei, putting the phone in his pocket, practically ran out of the apartment, not remembering about his Borset. I remembered only in the car, but did not return. I transferred for a ride to the phone number and went home with a clear conscience. From the anxious thoughts, my heart crumbled so that it turned out a little more, and Yulia just won't survive. She will suffocate. I wanted to cry from the insult, but there were no tears anymore. When I creaked the lock on the front door, I tried to take myself in my hands and pretend that I was quite calm about what my husband did. In his head, he drew a plan in which to devote to Sergei, and she was not going to, at least now. Let her go to bed. He showed her his true attitude. No one will look for excuses anymore. There will be no second chances. There will be nothing at all. After all, she made herself get up, put on a robe, and look into his shameless eyes. Yulia just walked Olga. We talked, shared memories. There was nothing between us. You don't believe me? Well, call her. I have nothing to hide. He was completely calm, absolutely sure that nothing mortal did not happen. You can live on, as if he was telling at a clock at night about some ordinary things. And she should go into his position and not cling to such little things. I'll put you on the couch. I threw it over my shoulder. Why? The face stretched out of surprise. I realized that it would be better not to argue with her now. I agreed silently. I threw my clothes on the chair. With a prolonged breath, I collapsed like a mitten on an untidy sofa and almost instantly fell asleep. In the morning, Julia woke up in the light of dawn. Sergei, with a calm conscience, was lying on the couch. My hand was unwillingly pulled to the phone. I wanted to call Din. I didn't know what she would ask, but I hoped that my sister would tell me everything herself without any questions. Dina, I woke you up, I asked, feeling that my heart was jumping out of my chest. I understood that it was still early, but I couldn't wait any longer. If you tell me now that your husband didn't come to sleep, I'll tear him apart myself into 2 parts with bare hands, Zawaya said in a sleepy voice. He came at 4 o'clock. Now he sleeps like a dead man, and I don't know what to do. I was shocked, wiping my tears. Yulia, I understand you. Where is this goat going? We sent him and Vaskaya home. But no. Well, how? No, to think about you. This Don Juan went to see Olga off. They left together by taxi. The time was about. Where and what he was doing all this time, I do not know. Dina literally broke through after the break. She was upset with anger, ready to really bare hands to deal with Sergei and any way to knock the fool out of his head. All clear. Thank you for not hiding anything from me. The heart was choked with pity for itself. Now Julia felt an open displeasure for her husband and even disgust. One thought was spinning in my head that it was time to end it all. Otherwise, again, you will have to understand endlessly. Only she doesn't need it anymore. Sergei's phone rang. After reading the message, Julia even more confirmed her desire to finally divorce. Hello, how did you get there? Since you didn't come back, it means that your wife didn't kick you out of the house. You left me your Borset. At the end of the message, a smiling smiley was handsome. Seeing that Sergei opened his eyes, Julia typed the apartment number. Roman, good morning. I want to upset you. I give you a week to find yourself new housing. I was silent, listening to the dissatisfied voice from the interlocutor. I understand everything, Roman, but you too understand me. We have disagreements in the family. We will divorce my husband. Of course, for some time I can live with my mother, but I won't last long there. I won't kick you out on the street, but try to get out of the apartment as soon as possible. No, Roman, we won't change our minds. Okay, I understand you. I'll be waiting for the call. Goodbye. It was disgusting to look at Sergei's surprised face. After 1.5 years, everything repeated. The husband again got drunk, changed, put in front of guests in an awkward position, spent the night with some incomprehensible and unfamiliar girl. And if all this had not happened to her, then probably it would be possible to laugh. But Yulia was not a joke. Again a blow under the belt, and again from her beloved husband. Yulia, what's going on? Why are you kicking out the tenants? How he escaped from home because the soul demanded a continuation of the holiday. How Dinka sent home and it did not fit his plans. Remembered youth, made memories. Who could have thought that a cornered and shy girl would turn into such a beautiful and knowingly valuable woman and a rather interesting interlocutor? It seemed it was only worth stretching your hand and taking what sin to bury. I thought about intimacy, but remembered in time. Maybe while driving a taxi, he was a little scared, or maybe he was thinking about Dina's words. At that moment, he did not think about the emotions of his wife, which will be caused by his behavior. Yulia, what are you doing? I give you an honest word, there was nothing between us. A drop of cold sweat rolled down the spine. Why did you just run after the bar? Yes, you need to drink less, and in my case you can't drink at all. Smiled, remembering how midnight could not wait for a taxi. Who could have thought that there are still such impassable places in the city? If you don't believe me, I'll call Olga now. I have nothing to be afraid of. He confidently took his phone in his hands. Why? Yulia was surprised to see her husband. I saw everything with my own eyes yesterday. Say now everything you want. No one will believe you anyway. Today we are going to my mother with my son. As soon as Roman leaves the apartment, we'll call you and decide who will move there. On Monday, I submit the documents for the divorce. There is no point in delaying time. Yulia, are you crazy? Kitten, don't boil. Reduce the speed. I was not going to cheat on you with anyone. You know very well, I don't need anyone but you. I understand that I behaved, well, to put it mildly, ugly. But because of such things, they do not get divorced. Forgive me. I was wrong again, but honestly, the last time, I tried to get closer and hug, but Yulia, hitting him with her elbows, pushed away, as if driving away a nasally lion fly. Don't touch me. Come back for your borseka. They're waiting for you there. You can let go of your hands there, but don't dare to touch me. You are annoying to me. Don't get me dirty with your dirty hands. Why do I need someone? I have a wife. Others are not interested in me. I told you, there was nothing between us. You don't believe me? I can swear anything. I have nothing to hide. Go to Uralia. At the same time, you will take the bar. No one will hold you. Forward. I bowed at the door. Matvey, wiping his eyes, looked unhappy, as if his parents prevented him from watching the morning dream. Mom, Dad, why are you screaming like that? Son, it's time to get up. Now we have breakfast with you and go to Grandma. I warn you that we are leaving with Dad. It's because Dad left yesterday. Yes, son. Dad came back in the morning. Do you remember how he was snuggling yesterday near an unfamiliar aunt? How did you persuade him to go home? Julia bit her lower lip. I didn't want to burden my son with problems. But on the other hand, Matvey is already a pretty big boy. He will go to school next year. I perfectly understood that it would be difficult for him to accept this news, but damn it, he must understand that his father is wrong. Dad, where have you been? I hope this time you will not put ultimatum and fight for him. You are already a big boy. I saw how Dad behaved. I don't want a repetition. Waved an unresolved tear. I didn't want to show my weakness, but the breath betrayed me. The hard breath felt like every time I died making the last breath. There will be no more repetitions. I promise, loudly swallowing. Horse, said Sergei, trying to portray a smile on his face. I've already heard it. How stupid the fool hung her ears, believed you. Hoped that you realized everything. And yesterday you again showed yourself in all its glory. Maybe in the eyes of Olga you looked alpha male yesterday. And for me you again became a cheater and the most real traitor. I will not allow myself to be humiliated anymore. Looking at the contents of the closet, I tried to figure out what else I had put in the bag. I wanted to leave the apartment as soon as possible, run away anywhere, hide, just so as not to see his physiognomy. If it weren't for the child, I might have thrown myself at him with fists. I slipped with a look at his unhappy face, folded my hands on my chest as if I was defending myself. Let him not hope for anything. Their family union cracked through the seams a year and a half ago, and yesterday it crumbled into small pieces. Stay with Matvey. I'll go myself now. Oh, that would be just great. I didn't offer you such an option. I thought you wouldn't agree. Thank you for going on a concession. Julia pointed her hand towards the entrance door. Collect your things and please go out. I warn you right away. I do not forbid you to meet your son, but forget about me. I'm leaving now, but only so that you think well and calm down. I swear, I never thought about putting you in an uncomfortable position, not even talking about changing. Son, do you believe me? Matvey looked down. Don't use forbidden techniques to pressure your son. He may believe you, but I can't do it ever. And no complaints about me will work. We have already passed this. This should have been thought about yesterday when he was drunk. But the son persuaded you. Asked Dad to go home. Only for some reason Dad didn't care about it yesterday. Where are we? In front of my eyes, a woman of dreams named Alia. While Sergei was in a hurry to pack his things, Julia was holding his upset son to herself. It would be possible to close your eyes again. My husband knew perfectly well. She felt that there was no physical betrayal. Of course, no one could give % guarantees, but constantly being on a powder barrel and waiting for it to burst is such a pleasure. Material thoughts can be dragged into such depths that from there to madness. It was hard to breathe when the front door closed behind the husband. Matvey was strained like a little puppy. He touched his face in her chest. Julia braided his hair, kissed his crown, and whispered so quietly that Matvey rather felt than disassembled her words. Do not be offended by me, son. For you he will always be a father. No one will forbid you to communicate. Hard times will pass sooner or later, but I promise you that everything will be fine with you. Completely confused, Sergei stood on the porch of the entrance and did not know what to do next. Machinery turned around, barely held back not to turn back. Once again ask Yulia for forgiveness, try to knock, explain. Well, knowing the stubborn character of his wife, he was absolutely sure that it was too early to do it now. Having left the bag on his shoulder, he hurriedly went to the parking lot. He got into the car, opened the windows from his side. Tired, he stood in front of the glass, broke his head and tried to come up with something. The voice of his wife still sounded in his head with a sinister whisper, throwing in different directions unsatisfactory thoughts, as if fragments of written and unnecessary sheets of paper. He inserted the key in the automatic machine, turned the key in the ignition lock. He breathed deeply and went, not understanding where to go. The first half an hour I almost did not understand anything. I was driving aimlessly along familiar streets. If before, stopping at the red light, wildly irritated, psyched, that I had to constantly slow down, wait for when the green light will light up, then today there was nowhere to hurry. That no one is waiting for him, and he has nowhere to rush. Sooner or later, I would still have to stop somewhere. The tank ran out of gasoline, and for this I had to go to Olga and pick up the bar. From the one and only thought that I would have to return to this unfavorable area again, it was pulled over. To my heart, from yesterday's meeting, there was an unpleasant. Having arrived home, he sat in the car for a long time, not knowing how to take himself for a skirka, and climbed to the 5th floor. Olga waited for him because without a preliminary call he could not visit her. She opened the door. The apartment smelled delicious with some kind of baking. Sergei almost choked on his own saliva, remembering that he had not eaten anything since morning.
Hello, come.
Olga did not have a gram of cosmetics on her face, her hair. Sergei could not help but note that without cosmetics and on a sober head to recognize her beauty today was quite difficult. I'm behind the bars. Well, you won't even come in? Smiling openly, Olga rolled over the wall and, pressing her hands against her chest, carefully looked at his face as if looking for scratches or traces of bruises. I got hit by my wife yesterday. If her ex-husband had behaved like that, she would have scratched his face or done something worse. And also, Now I don't know how to ask my wife for forgiveness. I grabbed a borset from the shelf and barely held myself back so as not to let her into the wall, as if she was to blame for all the troubles. I would have been offended if I were your wife. I should have listened to Dina yesterday and not go anywhere with you, probably with my shoulders. But what can I say about it now? Dinka in the morning already scolded me. I told her that there was nothing between us, but she only laughed and did not believe. Again, she was guilty, as if she did not understand how to behave in this situation. It is better to justify or be silent and not touch this topic at all. Seeing the upset face of Sergei, she turned away and quickly translated the conversation. Maybe you'll have breakfast? I baked pancakes. No thanks. No appetite. After her words, appetite really disappeared, and from one type of pancakes with butter, disgust arose. Here's a goat. Couldn't convince Dinka. Yes, apparently she didn't want to. How do you know my business to offer? She said, looking at him with resentment. Sergei just silently turned around, opened the door and threw it over his shoulder. Goodbye. I left the apartment, considering the options and thinking where to go next. After hearing his name, Julia carefully turned around, as if thinking whether it was worth stopping or better to pretend that she did not hear and to slip past. Hello, what are you doing here? A smile appeared on the face of her husband. From the fact that they had not seen each other for 2 whole days, a wild longing rolled. Words were spinning in his tongue that he was very bored, wanted to come, but knew that he would not talk. Sitting at work, I figured that during lunch break, my wife would go to serve documents for the divorce. I planned to intercept, detain, try to persuade, so as not to rush. I came to invite you for lunch. Seeing her surprised face, I was embarrassed. Yo, we need to talk. I don't find a place for myself. Don't you really care where and what's wrong with me? I missed my son. Can I take him from the kindergarten today? Yulia wanted to leave as soon as possible. The lunch was not rubber. She, of course, warned the boss that she might be late, but she was still in a hurry. The lawyer was waiting for her at the corner in the cafe. I didn't want to be late for the first meeting. Serioza, don't push for pity. Forget about the fact that we used to be together. Let's look into the truth. There is no family anymore. You can meet your son at any time. Just warn me in advance. It made no sense to kick him out of the empty threshold. Sorry, I have some important business. I'm in a hurry. Yo, wait. I grabbed the carrier's hand. Forgive me. There was silence in the air. Yulia has already opened her mouth to just untie, say that she is not angry with him. Yo, I know. I'm against divorce. It makes no sense to make promises again. You still won't believe it. But if you still don't forgive, Tosnij, imeni nichivo ani nada. Everyone leaves. Zabero toko mashinu I likni I vesh. Dvodnaya dumulkak proizvesti na zinov pochetelny. Asvami postupkami dokazat sveil yubov. Shdo zie glupasti. Atai where's his budesh? Yulia Pashila. Yevspomnala. Dina imeni Gavrila. Shtio u algi svaya kvartira. All s tabui paniatna. Neobias nemea obida kalnula v sami sertsi. Katya obazatsa bila glupa. Maybe she hasn't let go yet and worked out such a disgusting feeling as elementary female jealousy. Smiling, she quickly went forward, not paying attention to the words that were being said. What does Olga have to do with it? How will I live with her? Why do I need her? How can I tell you that there was nothing between us and will never be? She's not in my taste at all. God, what nonsense. I live with my parents. I don't need anyone except you. Sergei was walking in a straight line, talking and literally breathing in the back of his head. Are you done? Thank you for your generosity. But if you hope to complain about me with your gifts, then you are in vain. Nothing will work. I will not forgive you, and I will not rethink. Julia took a step forward before turning around the corner. Sergei was standing in one place. and looked at her in the back. Sergei fulfilled his promise, left both apartments to Julia, and brought all the things to the parents. A month after the divorce, Sergei's mother died, and the father survived the mother for exactly days. "Mom, can we have Dad while he lives?" Out of surprise, Julia almost dropped the fork. What does it mean to live? She looked at Matvey, turned her gaze at Sergei. The ex-husband sat on the table, took the condolences and slowly poured alcohol his grief. It was not enough for Sergei to be treated on the memorial. Why didn't she guess to warn him in advance? "Son, what does it mean to live? Dad has his own apartment. You better whisper to Dad so that he doesn't drink anymore." Matvey bowed to his father. Yulia turned away from them. Elena Petrovna recalled their barefoot childhood, then smoothly jumped over the years of school, did not forget to mention the late mother-in-law. "Yulia, so you allow me to live with you temporarily?" Sergei was interested in the drunken voice. He bent over to better see her. "Sergei, let's talk about it later." Yulia patted her face, waved, with difficulty holding herself back and feeling that she was boiling. Then I asked again, "When will everyone part? Are you trying to be good for everyone? Do you think they will love you for it and pay with the same coin?" I came up with some kind of nonsense. Dissolved with me, sucked the cause out of my finger. And my parents, Yulichka, turned out to be not iron. They were very worried. Here is the outcome. And having thrown the present, it was hard to breathe. I led them away with my hands. One son remained with me. Everyone was silent. Some looked at Julia with condemnation, whispered, quietly talked among themselves. "Sergei, we are here to commemorate my brother, and not to figure out who of you is to blame," his aunt poked, whispering to Julia that the nephew is all in the late father, one in one. Even the habits are the same. It happens. A good man was, but so far a sober one. Rarely drank, but in my youth it happened. She hugged her shoulders in her own way. "Listen, Yul, let Seryoga live with you for a few days. It's hard for him now. I'll call him to myself, but he doesn't want to shy us. I understand him. In our camp, Sergei will be difficult. I don't know when Lyudka will leave me and her family. Probably never." After a hard breath, Elena looked strictly at her nephew and Sergei, as if feeling his guilt. He put the glass on the table without drinking any more. He took the cigarettes from the table and left the table. Matvey followed his father. Julia said goodbye to Aunt Lena, citing a headache, and hurried after them. "Am I disturbing you?" To her surprise, there was no one else on the street except them. Matvey shook his finger at his father, and he silently nodded his head in agreement. "Matvey, it's time for us to go home," she said with a chill in her voice. In the end, she is former and not obliged to be here at all. Moreover, to listen to ridiculous accusations in his address. Completely insolent. I spilled all the wine on her, putting in front of people in an uncomfortable position. "Mom, I'll stay with Dad, and then we'll come together to our home." I pressed on my father. Sergei, throwing a dull look at her, stroked Matvey on the head. "Yul, forgive me. I myself did not understand what I was saying. The divorce, the death of the parents, I was dizzy, barely holding back my tears. I will not drink anymore. Let's sit down a little more, and we'll all go home together. Don't drive me away. I can't be alone now. It's hard for me. It so happened that, except for you and your son, there is no one to turn to." People began to slowly disperse. On the street, practically in full, Sergei's relatives found out that they were going very far, expressed their condolences, and all the crew went to the parked nearby bus. Julia was completely confused. I didn't want to stay here anymore. I didn't want Sergei to live with her anymore. And it's uncomfortable to refuse. No matter how there is, Matvey is his son. Let them divorce, but Sergei is still not a stranger. Alimony he pays, the son is taken to the cinema on the weekend, to entertainment centers. Matvey, as if feeling that she was hesitating, clung to his father and did not leave him for a minute. Okay, but Serioza, please don't touch me anymore and don't blame me for anything. Yulia was angry at me for a joke. She understood that it was not the time to find out the relationship, but she could no longer stop. What does he allow himself? Already the death of his parents hung on her. I am very sorry that this happened, but what do I have to do with it? People went out on the street. Yulia was silent. Sergei was distracted for a while. Sorry, what did you want to tell me? Everything is fine. Let's go to the gym. The first time in a day Julia saw a tired smile on his face. Apparently, after counting that the incident was over, he opened the door in front of her, let his son go ahead, and they all went to the gym together. To her surprise, Sergei kept his promise. He did not drink anymore, did not start unpleasant conversations. However, having arrived home, he felt like a squeezed lemon. He fell asleep from fatigue. Coming out of the shower, with the permission of Julia, he lay down on his sofa and, barely having time to put his head on the pillow, immediately fell asleep in a sound sleep. In the morning, Julia woke up from the smell of eggs. She looked at the refrigerator on the real bedside table. You could still sleep for as long as minutes. They don't eat with Matvey in the morning, and she drinks tea at work at 10 o'clock. She put on her robe and disappeared into the kitchen. Standing on the threshold, I saw Sergei casting a spell over the stove. Good morning. Sergei shuddered in surprise. You scared me. Good morning. There was no surprise. I wanted to set the table beautifully and then wake you up. He took out a knife and cut the bread. He placed 3 plates on the table. I found some beautiful napkins in the cabinet. Can't sleep. She took out the capsule from the box and put it in the coffee machine. She took a mug from the shelf. Hearing the, I tried not to save and quickly remind. If you start to loosen your hands, then I will send you home. I warn you not to have any offenses later. She said clearly, profusely. No smiles, no hasty movements, and especially the games. Sergei seemed to be rolled over with cold water. I wanted to kiss her, but Sergei held back. I walked away from her at a safe distance. I was afraid that by doing this, it would destroy the fragile little world that had recently formed between them. However, the circumstances were upsetting, thanks to which he was here again. Yulia, I wanted to say thank you for sheltering me. If only you knew how good I feel about you. Seriaz, let's make a deal so that there are no complaints later. We with our son in a difficult moment, stretched out your hand of help. That's all. There will be no closeness between us. Having made a sip of coffee, I put the mug on the table. From her piercing gaze, it was not hidden that the grumpy mood of Sergei immediately flew away. Closing his teeth, he curled up and for a few seconds kept silent. I understood you. It's just hard to hold yourself in your hands when you're close. As in the good old days, I want to touch you, kiss you. I still can't get used to the fact that we are divorced. Okay. Quickly, having finished coffee and rinsed the mug, Matvey went to wake up. This is your day off today, and you can't be late for work. Go get ready. I'll wake up my son myself. I'll feed him, take him to the garden. Not paying attention to her surprised look, poured cold water into a glass of water, dried to the bottom, and almost ran to the nursery. Yulia was sitting at her work table when Dina called her on Sotova. Hello, sister. How did you go to the funeral yesterday? I hope your ex this time went without excesses. No, hearing that Sergei temporarily settled at her, she was stunned. Yulia, you completely stopped being friends with your head. Why did you let him go? If you don't have time to look, he will again be in your bed. You need it. By the way, Alya is constantly interested in them. I even wanted to ask for a leave and go to the funeral. But after finding out from me that you will be there, I was very surprised and changed my mind. Dina, what are you talking about? We are officially divorced. If they even meet and start, I will get a light bulb. I just supported him in a difficult moment. That's all. The day after 3 or 4, I will openly hint that he is leaving. You can pass on my words about Olga. Let him try to paint his loneliness. He just needs someone to put on his shoulder. Come to visit us today. Vazhya's friend will call his friend. Let's sit down with the 4 of us, chat. He has such a good friend. I like him so much. By the way, not married. I lived with a girl in a civil marriage, but something happened to them there. In short, they ran away. Let's get to know you better. Dina still praised Vazhya's friend for a long time, but Julia did not listen to her anymore. It did not work out in the clinic to stop this unnecessary conversation. I was not going to waste time on such nonsense. Moreover, at the moment, there was no desire to meet. Dina, well, stop praising me. I don't need it. She tried to stop. Then just come tonight. Let Seryoza talk to her son alone, and you will spend the evening with me. We haven't seen each other for a long time. I need to tell you something very, very important. I immediately warn you, this is not a phone conversation. Silence prevailed in the phone. Colleagues have already started to flirt with Yulia. Talking on the phone for a long time at work time was not particularly welcomed. On the plans, comments were made about this constantly. Okay, I'll come. Until the evening. After dropping the challenge, Julia easily sighed. What kind of a dink is not humane? It is necessary to come up with such a thing. Having loaded myself with urgent work, which was desirable to do yesterday, Julia did not notice how time flew by, and it was necessary to get ready to go home. Remembering that she had not warned Sergey yet, she typed his number. Sergey, hello again. Can you pick up Matvey today? I was just going to call you. I picked up Matvey today earlier. We are preparing dinner with him. In the background, I heard a joyful voice of my son. Matvey asked something about Sergey, and he asked him to wait for him, not to touch anything without him. Dinner today without me. I will come late. Ivan Timofeyevich loaded the work. I have no time. I have to stay. I lied because I knew that if he tells the truth, then Sergey will come to the day, and he will be purple, that no one invited him. Yo, my son and I tried. My aunt and I were in the cemetery in the morning. I thought we would symbolically commemorate our parents in the evening. Aunt Lena passed pancakes. Baked a whole mountain in the morning. Yulia wanted to move the meeting to another day and go home today, but seeing that Dina's second line is being crossed to her, she immediately realized that she would not get anything. Serious, do not wait for me. Have dinner. I will be late. Sorry, I cannot talk. I have a second line. Hearing the worried voice of her sister in the phone, she immediately answered that she would be there in about an hour. Well, finally, opening the door, Dina threw herself on her neck and kissed. Let me look at you. The assessor twisted. You look great. What can I not say about myself? Gently stroked the convex belly. The toxicosis tormented. I would rather be released. My legs began to leak. Vazhya came out of the kitchen. Hello, Yulia. Well, what are you standing near the door? Come in. While I washed my hands, Dina, covering the door in the bathroom, in a mysterious tone, began to whisper. Alex already came to sit in the kitchen. You are my sister. I just invited you to visit because we haven't seen each other for a long time. Julia shook her head and rolled her eyes and sighed heavily. I'd better stay home. Having moored on the edge of the bathroom, I looked at my sister with displeasure. Don't be a coward. Everything will be fine. Lyosha is a good guy. I wouldn't have met you if I met someone. Let's go to the table. I already want to eat. Moreover, there is a reason. What have you come up with again? I didn't tell you on the phone. On the last weekend, we had Vazhya's daughter. I have had doubts about fatherhood for a long time. I did a DNA test. Aniuta is not Vazhya's daughter. Viola is tearing and stabbing. What? Julia opened her eyes. What about the fact that Vazhya has it? Vazhya these days walks like a bad dog. And he looks at me as if I'm to blame for the fact that Anya is not his daughter. And my fault is only that I did the analysis, not putting Vajia in the spotlight. But God sees. Dina rolled her eyes. I myself did not expect such a result. Until the last one, I was sure that money was on the line. But when I saw the envelope and saw the number, I thought I was going to faint. I began to rub a clean towel in my hands. Well, why are you looking at me like that? Tell me I'm wrong. By the way, I will soon give birth to a husband of my child. I will sit in a decree for a long time. Small boy looked at Yulia's pale face in the eyes, trying to get support. But Yulia was silent, shaking her head, and it seemed to fall into the most real stupor. And what does Vajia say? Yes, nothing says. Yesterday Viola called me, asked about her father Anyaka. Heard from her a non-sensorial. She immediately crouched and even seemed to be in a state of grief at the death of three, trying to close her eyes from the torture in her improvised house. Why did she agree? Now she sits as if not in her plate, not in the strength to raise her eyes and look at Alexei. Well, okay. Nothing. The watch will somehow sit out, then go to work and go home. She will tell Dina that Alexei didn't like her at all, and she shouldn't worry about it at all. Yulia, meet my friend Alexei. Vajia smiled sincerely as if he really wanted to play an important role in her future fate. Here's a monster. He has a full mouth, and he makes a friend with a reliable hand. Nice to meet you. You've already met us at your wedding. She laughed, looking at the embarrassed Alexei. You better tell me what you will do with Viola. Seeing how Dina, with a good head, put a spoonful of salad on the plate, decided to translate the conversation into another topic. I don't know what to do myself. Anyaka is sorry. She mumbled and immediately began to tell how the former wife perceived this news. Lyoka, you kind of took my place. He abruptly stopped and asked the question. Well, give up on the court, refuse to eat, you will soon have your own child. And Anyuta, well, just like before, you will take on weekends. And time will then set everything in its own right. After all, his girlfriend has a father. Not from the Holy Spirit, she was born. It is clear that it is difficult, it is a pity for the child, but in her time no one regretted it. Okay, Viola was an exemplary wife, but so let her go past the cash register. Alexei turned his face, wanted to continue, but failed. Yulia's phone broke with a loud melody. Sorry, ex-husband. Yulia went out of the table. Yes, Sergei, what happened? What happened is that Matvey and I came to your work, and the guard said that you left on time. Even at a distance, Yulia felt how Sergei was nervous. I don't have to report to you. This is my personal life. Go home. I'll arrive a little later. I'm busy right now. I tried to speak calmly and not pay attention to his antics. Fine. It wasn't enough for him to control her. Completely insolent. Have you got someone? Not paying attention to her words, Sergei did not let up. And if so, then what? I said, don't look for me, go home, bye. Without having time to reset the call, she went into the kitchen. She turned a frowning glance at her sister, met with eyes studying her mood. Alexei. I expressed my point of view. It's interesting to listen what Julia thinks about it, asked Alexei. Dina, smiling warmly, covered her cold hand like an ice brush, as if trying to cheer up and at the same time get some support. According to Alexei, having made a pause and bringing a little thoughts in order, continued. I hate her. I can't see her. I also feel sorry for Anichka, but you won't regret all the children. Alexei said it right. The girl has a father. Dina did everything right. I would have done the same in her place. I understand everything. It's hard for Vajia now, but paying food to someone else's child all your life is hurting. It was only worth remembering how Viola diligently destroyed their family. The tears that were not shed immediately fell on her eyes. Perhaps the children were also not from Sergei, but with her behavior, she managed to soothe everyone's nerves. If they had not moved, then probably I would have to ask for consultation with specialists. Such as Viola will not disappear, will quickly reappear and find who will contain her children. Thank you, sister. Maybe the husband will listen to your words. By the way, to Viola, I am taken only because of Yulka. If I didn't know what she's capable of, I wouldn't even have to doubt her order. Vajia, with gentle movements, held out his thumb on her chin, overlaid the breadth of the lips. You did everything right, but I ask you not to do anything behind my back and without my consent. Strictly looked at her. But I promise. But I honestly did not expect such a result. I don't know what I found to take your cups and take them to the laboratory. Some kind of just unbeatable temptation attacked at that moment and did not let go until I did everything. When the doorbell rang, only cups with green tea were on the kitchen table. Dina, on the rights of the owner, cut the cake brought by Alexei. Who brought it? Vasily, not happy, rose up.
Hello, Vasya.
We drove past your house. Matvey asked me to stop by his favorite Aunt Dina. When we came closer, we saw our mother's car parked. Hearing Sergei's voice, Julia introduced them to the conversation behind the round table looks from the side. She took an indescribable view, calming herself with the fact that he will understand everything, but he will not dare to start a scandal. Good evening to everyone. Matvey immediately approached Julia. Dina stretched out her hands to him. He instantly rushed to her, allowing her aunt to hug and kiss, began to tell in a hoarse voice how they were preparing dinner with Dad today. Do you want a cake? Vajia put 2 plates on the table, took out clean cups, moved the chair to Sergei. Sergei stretched out Alexei's hand. We didn't bother you by accident? Asked, looking at him in the distance. I heard only distant noise from the neighbors on top, stepping on the ceiling. Julia opened her mouth to put the word, but Alexei ahead of her. If you want to hear my personal opinion, then I will answer honestly and only for myself. I personally interfered. Julia froze with her mouth open, unable to believe in what Alexei said. Dina stopped smiling, putting Matvey near herself. I put a spoon in my hand and, to discharge the situation, I spurted several times. Matvey, not paying attention to the adults, clapped the aunt on the hump. Oh, come on. I'm not even surprised. Don't be afraid. You are engaged in waterfaring. I look at Yulia, and the groom was pulled up. It is not a shame to weave intrigues behind my back. Under the constant and firm gaze of Sergei, Din Augusta blushed. Yulia came to help. I did not understand. If you came to spoil everyone's mood, you can immediately turn around and leave back. Be kind. If you have already come to your former relatives without an invitation, then show them respect. Sergei remained silent for a few seconds, then, with a good shake of his head, squeezed a smile on his face. You're probably right, Dina. Sorry. Apologies accepted. Sergei himself did not know why he turned around halfway and went to Dina. His magnet pulled him where really no one invited. Some strange pre-feeling did not give rest, and when he saw next to his wife Vajia's friend, heart broke into shudder. You have to be a complete idiot to understand nothing, perfectly realized that he was the third superfluous, and even had no right to be offended, especially jealous, and the head immediately knocked. Sergei squeezed his fists to the white bones. But so that no one noticed anything, he greeted everyone cheerfully and stretched his opponent's hand. And when he heard his answer, he almost broke again. Only Yelina's words brought him back to reality and saved him from a careless step. We actually jumped in for a minute with Matvey. Son, let's go home, and Aunt Dina will put the cake with you. He took a step towards the exit, and no one except Vajia stopped him. Sergei, where are you going? Stay. We were just talking. The topic is very ticklish. Dina did a DNA test quietly. It turned out that Anya is not my daughter. Now I'm breaking my head. I don't know what to do with this test. Sergei looked at Yulia. In her eyes, he read about the same offense when she pressed him to the wall, and had to confess about the betrayal with Viola. Then Olga. Although there was nothing between them, but instead of his wife, he would probably hide the offense. Only a fool like him could destroy everything with his own hands, and then look for the guilty. I sympathize with you, Vasily. He swallowed loudly. Dina did everything right. She loves you. Take care of her. Every word was given with difficulty. Matvey, are you with me? Despite Vasily's persuasion, he took a few more steps, looked around. Matvey hurried to his aunt, carefully watching how she was putting the cake. Julia stroked her son on the head, but his question was answered that he would come home soon. If only she could only assume how it was hard and painful for Sergei now. Perfectly realizing that you can't interfere in Yulia's life, he couldn't do anything with himself. He still considered her his wife and could not make up with the other. He hoped that, having moved to her with the help of his son, he would still manage to break another chance. But seeing Alexei next to him, he realized that he was losing his last hope. Sergei closed the door. Matvey pressed the elevator button. In complete silence, they went down. If not for the son, he would have gone to some bar now, got drunk from grief, and then it would probably be easier to realize that Yulka is now in the company of another. I didn't notice how the engine started in complete silence. Tomorrow he will just leave. You can't continue to live under one roof of a woman who decided to change and rebuild her life. Maybe you will go home. Sergei, seeing Lyoka, was upset with him and Matvey. He was excitedly bringing Vasya, not kindly looking at Dina. How many times did he convince her not to get into his business? Well, can you cope with her unbridled character? The damaged record has been fixed. I need to introduce Alex to my sister. And so, every day, I had to invite Alex to visit. It seems that the pretext was found, and now I felt completely stupid in front of Sergei. I tried to leave Matvey, but my nephew didn't even want to listen to me. He ran after his father. It was hard to breathe in an offended tone, said Adina. Do not overdo the situation. Sergei left himself. No one kicked him out. Everything will be fine. In minutes we will call him and ask how they got there. I do not understand your anxiety. They are divorced from Julia. What may be her claims? Unable to hold back, I inserted my word to Alexei, trying to disassemble the situation and surprisingly looking at the people present. I'm not going to follow them. Maybe, finally, Sergei will realize that there has been a gap between us for a long time. It's even good that he saw Alexei next to me. A tired smile appeared on her face. Dina tried to calm her down. The word covered her hands again with its own hand. Yulia, maybe I should invite you somewhere tomorrow? Hearing Alexei's invitation, she looked at him with surprised eyes. Where? She asked, stuttering. She sees this man for the second time. In addition to the sister's words that Alexei is a great guy, works in a bank and is not married, she knows nothing more about him. I don't know. If Mom can take Matvey to her, she said thoughtfully. If your mom can't take Matvey, we'll take him with us. Alexei did not back down. The boy is already big. He will be interested in himself. Well, okay, I guess, with Julia's shoulders. That's great. Tomorrow at 5 I will be waiting for you at work. Alexei smiled, nodding to surprised Vasya. Big Arrow was unbearably approaching a clock. The excitement increased. Why did she agree to go with Alexei to this event? Well, Mom was not busy and agreed to visit them for a few days. It's okay. Let them talk to their ex-son-in-law. It will only benefit them both. Hello. The heart beat twice faster when Alexei opened the back door of his car and took out the bouquet. This was not necessary to do. She thought about herself, but shyly smiled and said, Thank you, Alexei. There were a lot of people on the square. It seemed that everyone gathered here. The mood was festive for people. Laughter was heard from all sides, children's screams. Right next to them, the chef was conducting a master class. Excited responses were mixed into one joyful ghoul. What kind of kitchen do you want to try? Alexei shouted. Let's first find Dina and Vazhya, and then we'll all land together somewhere. She did not say that they had agreed to meet her sister near the Arch. Rastarina turned her head in different directions, but could not see them. And only when Alexei happily waved his friend's hand, she finally saw Dina. Sergei knows where you are? Instead of hello, she first asked for a hint, looking around, as if trying to find a familiar silhouette. Julia, negatively shaking her head, smiled. He in the morning said that he did not want to interfere with me in my personal life. Tomorrow he will take his things and return home. True, before that, I was talking for a long time for the sake of my son to try to live together again. And you? What about me? I told you to go home. And he? Din was not attentive. And he went crazy and, even after breakfast, went to work. That's the whole conversation. They had a great evening in 4. We had a delicious dinner, drank some red wine. Julia and Alexei had a lot of common interests. Having forgotten that they were not alone, they shared memories, laughed, found common topics for conversation. Friends looked at them and were only surprised at how harmoniously they looked from the side. Vazhya, I'm tired, let's go home. One of them took off and pulled him by the sleeve to the park not far from the car. Everyone, as if on command, without talking, went for Dina. Passing by the tent of Asian cuisine, the sister suddenly stopped and shudderingly patted her eyes on the pair behind the far table. Following her gaze, Julia saw Sergei, who something enthusiastically told Olga. On the table was a bottle of cognac, juice, fruits, and several dishes of Asian cuisine. This is the news, and Olga adored me that they have never seen Sergei after our wedding. Maybe we'll come up, say hello? She turned to Julia. I think they shouldn't be bothered. Let them talk. Julia tried to speak calmly, but it seems that she did it badly. The voice was treacherous and trembling. That's how you can trust people after that. Only in the morning he confessed to her in love, and in the evening he spends fun time in the company of the same Alya. She also doubted. She wanted not to go anywhere. The whole day at work she was angry that she was not deserved and offended him. Speaking a few uncensored words, she grabbed Dina by the hands and confidently headed to the parking lot. She was upset. Opening the door in front of her and helping to fasten the safety belt, Alexei asked. It was possible, of course, not to ask. On Yelina's face, everything was written. I didn't get angry. On the one hand, it's good that I saw it. Now there are no doubts that I did the right thing. I'm sorry I lost my time and didn't develop much earlier. When Viola was still on her heels trying to prove that her husband doesn't love me. But she was right. And I was stupid and still doubtful. It was hard to breathe, turn to the window, because I didn't want to talk about my ex-husband anymore. As Alexei did not try to talk to her, all the way Julia did not say a word. They stopped in the familiar yard. For a few minutes they sat in complete silence. Alexei patiently waited for Julia to realize that they had arrived. Finally, seeing familiar windows, she tried to thank for the evening and hurriedly leave the salon. Do not forget the flowers, Alexei recalled. I did not notice how I was so close that the electric current was pulsating over the body. Calm down. The shriek was heard, although at that moment it did not interfere with me to get up under the cold shower. Yes, I was not worried. The confusion spread. Feeling the heat coming from him, I lowered my eyes. So it seemed to me. I smiled at my guilt, blocking the passage with me. For a second, she thought he wouldn't hold back and kiss. Let go, turning away, she whispered. I'll come for you tomorrow, don't be late. I'll be exactly at 5. We'll go to the square again, try another kitchen. Only already apes. Let's not torture her anymore. Seeing the amazement on her face, he realized that he had overdone it. Let's take Matvey with us. Agreed? I'll think about it, but I don't promise anything. Smiling, Alexei walked away, not wanting to miss her. Yulia quickly headed to her entrance, opening the bag and taking out the key from the speaker. Yulia, Tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I'll call you. Hearing Alexei's voice, she didn't even turn around. She jumped into the entrance, and only when the doors in the elevator. Sergei did not come home for the night, and the next day he took his things and moved to his apartment, promising his former mother-in-law that he would be able to take Matvey to himself for all weekend. True, Julia did not see this. After learning from her mother that Sergei was packing, she decided to accept the invitation from Alexei and go on a date again. Hello, everyone. Hearing a happy to disdainful voice, Dina took her eyes off the monitor. Olga looked at her as if she were going to share something very significant and important. Dina immediately introduced Sergei next to her and, smiling, understood how unpredictable this soon-to-be formed union. Hello, Olya. She calmly spoke and again got into the computer. Details about how she spent the evening and with whom, she was not at all interested. The next day, Olga looked not so happy, but by the end of the week she was completely sour. Din, can I ask you something? Moving the chair to her table, she leaned a little closer. Of course you can. We'll be about. Din, and Sergei came back to Yulia again? What's the difference between you? She knew perfectly well that Yulia was living alone now. No matter how much Dina persuaded her not to push Alexei, the sister stood firmly on her and claimed that she was not ready to get into the relationship again. You understand. He called me last Thursday. We had a great time. It was hard to breathe as if deciding to reveal my secret or not. We spent the night together at his house. Everything was fine. He promised to call, but he disappeared without knowing what to think. What did you want? Sergei recently divorced. Maybe he hopes to make up with his wife. I'm sure Yulia will come to you right away if you just lure her with your finger. You need it. Having looked down, Olga shook her head. Need it? What do you think? If I go to him today, I will tell him myself, she said politely, stretching her hands to her in search of friendly support. But she didn't follow. Dina took her hands off the table and shrugged. Why humiliate yourself and run after a man? Tried, does not answer. Maybe he's sick? With the tongue almost flew off, so he doesn't need you. But the rumor was thoughtful. Everything can be. Din, please tell the truth. I can see it in your eyes, you know? He returned to his wife. Today Olga is not said to be lucky. She has a great mood. Friday, 2 weekends ahead. Tomorrow evening they are together with Julia and go to the premiere of the play. From the fact that Vasya still listened to her and submitted documents to court, the mood improved even more. Relax, he did not return. Yulia will not receive him back, so you can sleep calmly. Seeing that Olga literally jumped on the chair with joy, she smiled crookedly. Let her rejoice for now. When she starts crying, she will remind her of this. Hello. Seeing the incoming phone number of the former, Julia was slightly surprised. After he left, Sergei did not call, was not interested in his son. Julia was absolutely sure that he literally left with a new novel with Olga. Yo, hello, can I take Matvey from the garden today? I haven't seen him for a long time. I missed him. I want to spend the weekend with him. Julia did not expect to hear such words. Of course, she understood that Sergei was missing her son. But, did you think well? Can you handle it? Matvey is an independent child. If he gets hungry, then under the supervision of adults, he can cook an egg for himself, or warm up something ready in the microwave, or, at the end of the day, make a sandwich. Hearing from Sergei the affirmative, yes, she stopped worrying. Well, okay. I think when your son sees you, he will be happy. But only after 5 hours, Matvey called her and asked to take him from Dad. Opening the door, Sergei looked at Olga with surprise. Hello. You don't call yourself, and you don't answer my calls. She was offended. I was worried. What if you got sick, and you have no one to take care of you? The feeling of guilt gushed behind the ribs. Again, he did not hold back, allowed to take on the burden of the extra, and then he did not notice how Olga ended up in his bed. It is not known what she had come up with there, but in the morning Sergei did not know where to hide his eyes. Thank you for your care. I walked aside, let Olga into the apartment. I took my son for the weekend. My brains melted. Olga stood near the threshold, completely did not understand the hints. Only Mila smiled and waited for her to be offered to pass. Come in, said Suka. I sat in a chair, and only then greeted surprised Matvey. Dad, I thought we were brought pizza. I barely heard him looking at the guest. No, son. Aunt Alia came to visit us. I squeezed my shoulders, took out the box with the designer, trying to hint at Olga that they are not there. Dad, let's collect. Wait, son. Now they will bring us pizza. We will eat and then we will collect. Sergei went to open. Olga, putting her leg on the foot, smiled politely. And you are the very aunt, because of which Mom kicked Dad out of the house? Rough words were twisted in the language. Olga wanted to voice them out loud, but decided not to pester the situation. What did you take from me? Having raised one eyebrow in surprise, I asked a question. I remember you. You were at Aunt Dina's wedding, and you were praying to Dad. I really wanted Auntie Alia to be offended and leave. Listen, kid. I looked towards the corridor. Sergei, having taken the box of knitting needles from the courier, went to the kitchen. If you went home and didn't bother Dad, take the constructors and go to Mom. You have nothing to do, so you will collect the car. And we will have more important things with your dad. Threatening with an index finger, I warned. Just don't be a scoundrel and don't think about complaining. I will deny everything. And Dad thinks that you are a trouble. You are a big boy. You should already understand that Dad cannot live alone all his life. Seeing that Matvey listens to her carefully, again squeezed out a sweet smile. I want to make your dad happy. And if you help me, then I will succeed. After the night of Sergei, Olga daily read a prayer to get pregnant and give birth to a healthy baby. Every morning, waking up, I hoped to feel. But she felt so angry and didn't feel the urge to attack. And today, going to visit him, she planned to fix the result. The Armenian cognac bottle was in her bag, but she didn't want to pull it out. Dad loves Mom. Soon we will live together, because Mom will forgive him. And you go away, said Matvey. Sergei entered the room, hearing the word go away. Looking at the upset face of Olga, he was slightly embarrassed and waved his hands. Matvey thought that his father had sincerely pitied her. He was offended and grabbed his cell phone from the table. Mom, take me away. I don't want to be with Dad anymore. Yulia began to say something to him. Matvey nodded. Okay. He dropped the challenge and looked at Sergei, who did not understand anything. I want to get ready. In minutes, Mom will come for me. She will soon pass by your house. Son, why did you call your mom? You and I have always gotten along. Why are you hurting Dad? Sergei wailed while Matvey was packing his things. Stay. You and I wanted to collect the car, and tomorrow we were going to the park. You created the program yourself. I changed my mind. I want to go home. I wasn't going to talk about what Aunt Alia told him. It was not enough for him to be called Yabada and Karyabada later. Let Dad figure out who is his friend and who is his enemy. For him, Aunt Alia is an enemy, and let Dad decide for himself. I'll wait for Mom outside. Sergei thought that literally in the last hour, the son had grown up and turned into a reasonable teenager who did not live up to his age. I won't let you go alone. Grabbing the keys from the shelf, he hurried to get Matvey. Son, what happened? Is it because of Aunt Alia? He asked the question as soon as he slammed the door behind him. Matvey, pressing his lips, was silent. I don't really like her either. I thought she would understand that we are not happy and will leave. I'm not to blame for not reaching her. Yulia's car stopped near the entrance. Matvey, not even saying goodbye to his father, glared at the back seat and turned away. Yulia opened the window. What happened to you? Did you have a fight? Yes, everything was fine. They ordered pizza. He scratched his ear. Olga came to visit, although I did not invite her. Seeing the discontent on Yulia's face, I hurried to explain. And then I don't know what happened between them. I was not able to take minutes. I suspect. She was blabbing something, and Matvey is silent like a partisan. Son, what did Annie Alya tell you? Did she hurt you? Yulia turned to Matvey. We are your parents. We don't need to hide anything from us. Seeing that her son is not in the best mood, she tried to stir him up. Merskaya tetka, Matvey said, wincing. She told me to go home to my mother. This will only make things better for Dad. I muttered quietly, still doubting the correctness of my actions. What? Sergei croaked, his eyes wide. Opening the back door, he commanded, come out. It was still not enough for someone to point things out to my son. She will now fly out of my apartment on her own and will not enter it again. Slut. I was thinking, I should have known better. I should have known better. I realized that I was to blame for my son. I should have shown my rigidity and sent Olga. Therefore, now I tried to grab the slightest opportunity and fix everything and make up with my son. Matvey, although not, left the car. You really will send her home now. True, son. I stroked him on the head and turned to Julia. I hope we will not disturb you anymore. Do not worry, son. I will not let you be offended. The main thing is that you do not regret it later. Call me if you need me. It was hard to breathe and wave Matvey's hand. I went home. I will not regret it, watching the car with a sigh, said Sergei. Staying alone in the apartment, Olga went to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, figured out what else to put on the table except for pizza. I climbed into the freezer, looked at what tomorrow will be cooking lunch from, hurried to the hallway. Seeing Matvey again, she was confused, but did not give up. He decided to rethink. Mila smiled. What a stubborn one, she thought about herself. But it's okay. We'll re-educate over time. Olga, it's time for you to go home. He threw it over his shoulder. He did not become rude to his son, barely held back. Such words were twisted in the language from which the ears themselves were rolled into a tube, not to mention others. I thought we would all sit together. From surprise, could not pick up the right words. With a glance, one eye looked at Matvey, perfectly realizing that without his participation did not work. What a little bastard. Still, he let go of his tongue. No, this is excluded. Go home. Repeat the offensive words. Pushing his lips, Olga grabbed her bag. Goodbye. She turned around, screamed on the fly and left, leaving them finally together. And already on the street, she gave up tears, scolding the light of her little daddy son. Julia only in 2 years was able to get along in her personal life. They didn't get anything out of Alexei. A couple of months later, Dina reported that Alexei began to meet with his colleague. The girl got pregnant and Alexei had nothing left to do but make her an offer. Julia, her future husband, met her on the train. She was sent on a business trip. Nearby, on the lower shelf, there was a rather interesting and talkative passenger. Vladimir went to the wedding to his cousin. A year later, Julia had a faithful and loving husband, and after months, after the wedding, they took from the maternity home a mother with a little sister. Together with Julia, they lived in love and harmony until old age, and in universal help children to raise their beloved grandchildren. Dina gave birth to Vazia, a son, and in 2 years, a little daughter. The court satisfied the lawsuit for refusing to give birth to children. But Vazia still could not get Anuta out of his life. She often visited them with Dina, and never felt like a stranger. Sergei, after the divorce from Julia, married a woman 2 years older than himself. Natalia quickly figured out and, finding out the weak places of her husband, held him in hedgehog gloves. 3 years later, they broke up. Sergei married again, then broke up again. The third wife gave birth to his son, but after the divorce, Sergei again stayed alone in the parents' apartment, enjoying a rare meeting with Matvey. Olga tried several more times to restore the relationship with Sergei. Then she met a young man, got married, but could not recognize the joy of motherhood. 5 years later, her husband went to a pregnant lover. Viola's mother was very sick. Gradually, from a beautiful and flowery woman, she turned into a tired and tangled aunt. She was looking for Anyutin's father, and as he did not resist, but through the court forced to pay alimony, married so no longer came out. A lot of time and effort went to take care of a seriously ill mother. Often remembered Vazhya and regretted that in her time did not look in him what Dina could see.